All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, September 14th, 2021 Board of Selectmen meeting. We're going to go ahead and get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. Steph, do you mind leading us in the pledge?
I'd be honored. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, great. So we have quite a packed house here tonight, and we will get to the Moore Street item. Is there anyone here for citizens' input for anything that's not on the agenda? No. Okay. All right, so with that, we're going to move into our first item, since it looks like we have everyone here that we need. All right, so if you gentlemen come up, it looks like there's some serious tenure about to approach the table.
There's an awful lot of gold.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'll steal this for a second. I was doing the math, and at one point, we were considered the young guys, but we've almost collectively hit 60 years of police work.
Wow.
When I added it up, so I'm gonna be going through every single page today on this,
Okay.
so I just wanna make sure everybody's prepared.
The audience doesn't mind, right?
I know you won't.
So I just want to thank everybody tonight for having this opportunity to share a milestone by the Foxboro Police Department with our community. I want to highlight that the milestone reach is not an individual award, but rather a reflection of an amazing police department that serves a community filled with compassion and pride. Tonight, I'm here with Deputy Chief Richard Noonan and Sergeant Luke Drayton to announce that the police department has reached a new level of professional excellence with being awarded the prestigious status of certification by the Massachusetts Police Accreditation Commission. The department proactively committed to this process many years ago. Certification is considered the best measure of a police department against established best practices from around the country. What does that mean? Certification means that the department is committed to meeting professional standards, is willing to be assessed regularly by a commission-appointed assessors to confirm compliance with professional standards, and agrees to correct deficiencies discovered during the assessment to establish or reestablish compliance with the standards. Impact program requires that the department meets 159 mandatory standards to attain certification. That is double-sided too, just for the record, okay? The recent police reform mandated 8 standards. Standards include maintaining up-to-date policies, jurisdictions and mutual aid agreements, collection and preservation of evidence, communications, working conditions, crime analysis, financial management, internal affairs, juvenile operations, patrol administration, public records, traffic, training, drug enforcement, and victim witness assistance. This accomplishment is no small success and should never be minimized. Out of the 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth, 98 are accredited and 19 are certified. Another 112 are in the self-assessment stages, and many haven't even attempted it. So how did we get here today, and what does that mean? At this time, I'm going to let Deputy Chief Noonan describe the process he used to build a team and where we are today and where we're headed tomorrow. Deputy?
Thank you, Chief. Good evening. Thank you for inviting us up here tonight. As the Chief said, this has been a long process to get to where we are today, certification. If you look at, you look at a binder full of papers and words, right? So what do those papers and words mean, and how does that impact the police department? How does it impact the community, right? 21st Century Policing Task Force identified the most important part of policing is you need to have sound policies. With sound policies, you're able to obtain police legitimacy within the community. You're able to have administrative oversight. And the way we have our policy dissemination process set up is every time we introduce a new policy or make a change to a policy, we have a training aspect on it. So we're meeting not only the standards, but we're training on them on a frequent basis. The oversight is the most important part of the accreditation process, which I'll talk about, but the oversight provides the community with feeling that knowing that, okay, they have policies and procedures, but they have an administrative oversight to make sure that the officers are doing the right thing. And day out, we're doing the right thing, not only in words, but by actions as well. So the process is twofold, right? So first we need the policies and procedures. The Massachusetts Police Accreditation Commission sets forth the standards that we need to meet. So out of these all these pages of policies, only a few standards are in within each one. You could have like a 10-page policy, but you're only meeting one standard on that policy. So out of the 159 standards that we meet, we need to get that language incorporated into our policy. And then the second part is to prove, we bring in what's called assessors that come in and assess our department. That was a 2-day process. So we take all the standards, put them in individual folders, and then they go through the policies, but they're not all policies. All we're doing is highlighting the specific standard. I have an example. So even though this is a 6-page policy, this is what's highlighted. Just all the assessors want to see is what is the language that the Police Accreditation Commission sets forth that they want to make sure that we meet. So that's in a folder, and then they want to see compliance. So we have to go through and prove that we're doing what we say. If we're not doing what we say, they're just empty words. So that's where the administrative follow-up comes up. So this is just an example. Like, we need to prove to the commission that we do cell inspections every week. So we got to put that in the folder. And that just goes on for all 159 standards that we meet. Policies range from everything from administration to use of force to pursuits. And we're required to not only meet the standards, but make sure that we're testing ourselves and holding ourselves responsible for those standards. Sergeant Drayton was a big help, as well as Lee McCarthy. Lee McCarthy helped me with all the editing and formatting. Sergeant Drayton was responsible. He had the pleasure of highlighting all the policies. So, but it's an important aspect, because it's really, when assessors come in, and I'm an assessor as well, so I'll go to different departments and review their policies and procedures. Like one word, they can sit there and talk about it for a half hour. We're proud to say that in our assessment, we had to change 3 words, which as an assessor is pretty hard to come by. So thanks, Luke, for all your hard work. But you're also part of it too. Like, so we have we don't make policies, right? We need to have a review of it. So we have a department internal review. It consists of myself and the chief, and then we distribute it internally to the union, to officers that have specialized training, as well as our division commanders. We get feedback from them. Chief and I make a final determination. We send it to our external review committee, which consists of the Selectmen chairperson, town manager, Mr. Keegan, and town council. So there is a whole cumbersome review on it, and anything that there's questions on, we discuss it and make the determination what's best for the police department and the community.
So,
In a nutshell.
we're going to try to be brief. So that's where we are today. So we cannot hit accreditation until we hit certification. We can't skip this step. This is probably the hardest step. So our goal moving forward is in the next 9 months to be accredited. So we just think it's so important that everybody know, that our community know, that their police department is working and operating at the highest standards set forth by the profession, not just in the Commonwealth, but throughout the whole nation. And I think
Mike,
that,
could you give in 5 or 10 words, max, how to explain what the significance of being accredited as well, and why it's so important?
well, as we move forward, especially with the post and police standards, it is going to be required, as I said, for every police department. So we're already that far ahead. This takes years to implement. You do not just become a certified or accredited department, because you have to practice the policies. You have to teach your staff how to do things over and over. And I'll tell you, the officers within our agency are fantastic. They're so receptive, because they understand that when you have these practices that are sound, that you're operating at the highest level. And it gives you the confidence to go out and do your job and know you're supported from the administration, from the town manager as well.
So, Madam Chair, I just want to say this is an extraordinary accomplishment. I congratulate the department wholeheartedly. I know that this is actually started under Chief O'Leary, former Chief O'Leary, who worked on this for many years. I know Rich has been significantly involved in this since day one. I mean, you've been really the guy behind the scenes pushing this right along. So congratulations to you. I know you put a lot of work into this. And then the department as a whole just means that we're that much better equipped for the world that we live in today. And I think that's probably the most significant piece of this, is that these guys know, and these guys and gals know, that this is a department that's professional, it has standards that they live up to, and they seek accreditation, which is the highest standard you can get. And I'm really proud of the work that they've done here, and I want to say congratulations
Thank
to the work you've done.
But this is a fluid document. This is ever-changing. As practices change, we have to update. As case law comes out and procedures are changed by court decisions, we have to modify all those changes with our self-assessment as we go, constantly, all the time. So it's not one and done. It's a process forever. So it's part of our operation moving forward.
Well, as the policy-making board in town, I think we understand the importance, of the policy. And I think we're very proud of the police department here in Foxborough, and I think you and your team should be very proud of all the work, too. So this is the certification stage, and then next comes the accreditation stage?
Correct.
And what's the time to get to completion there, do you think?
That, you can never say you're gonna get there.
Okay.
I'll
Oh,
be
wow.
realistic. But I will get there.
Okay.
But some departments don't. But you go from 159 standards to 257?
We gotta complete another 167 standards. Foreseeing that we were gonna be accredited shortly thereafter, a greater portion of those standards are already involved in our policies, so we're ahead of the game.
Wow.
It all depends on everyday operations and how, it's time and tedious, so it's the amount of time that we can spend on the project.
So yes, there was a benefit to COVID and not having Gillette Stadium.
A lot of highlighting to do.
Okay.
All right, any other questions from the board or any comments?
Bravo.
what
Like Leah said, I think we're all very proud of our police
I
department.
think it deserves a round of applause.
Yeah.
And I think all three of you are from town, and like you said, it was 60 years between you. I was very happy to see all three of you walk in the door. It's
Are we
always-
required to give our high school graduation year? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Appreciate it.
Good job.
All right. Mr. Dudley and Mr. Correa, you guys ready for the next item, or do you have your guest with you, or just you guys, just you two? Okay, great.
No guess.
Okay.
This one.
There's two microphones there too, so you might just want to shift
Oh.
them down.
Oh, I get
There you go. Perfect, thank you. So if you could just introduce yourselves to those few people maybe who don't know you and let us know why you're here tonight.
I'm the chairman of the Foxborough Child Sexual Awareness Committee. This Phil Dudley, he's
Bill Dudley, Vice Chair.
of the same committee.
Okay.
So we're here tonight to present a check that was given to us by a gentleman, a totally stranger, and it's for $2,000, is to support our training and our efforts in spreading the awareness. Now, Bill will tell you a little story about how it happened, and
Well, just very briefly, so our committee is about working to prevent child sexual abuse, and we've trained over 2,000 people in the town of Foxborough on that subject. And I was to tell a story very quickly, I was at Stop and Shop in Mansfield about a year and a half ago, and I happened to mention our committee and its work to somebody who was there, because it's like my second religion. And this gentleman approached me. He identified himself as a sexual abuse survivor, asked what he could do, said he was interested in telling his story, and he ended up meeting with us a couple times, gave us a check, which I'm holding for $2,000. He's actually splitting his time between Massachusetts and Costa Rica, and has actually begun an effort there on child sexual abuse. So what we've started in Foxborough, we're trying to spread. Now we're evidently, our influence has reached Costa Rica, so that's a good thing.
so, do you have the check or no?
It's right here.
Who can we trust this to?
Christina.
Christina.
All right,
Christina.
She's like
who-
the brain in the middle of the table, see?
all right.
Christina, who, by the way, has been a great contact for our committee and arranged trainings and has been absolutely terrific, so we're grateful for her. So she gets the $2,000.
All right. So there's a couple things I'd just like to tell you about, some recent things we've been involved with. One was we were filmed in a documentary, German-Australian project, dealing with Boy Scout problems in the United States, where quite a bit took place within this town a few years back. It was part of it was filmed in this town, part of it was filmed across the country. The only problem I had was it was in German, so I couldn't understand what I was saying anyways. The American documentary is going to be start filming here starting Monday. And it's a homegrown in this country, so we'll be able to understand a little better. And it's be dealing with our previous struggles and how we've dealt with them. The procedures, all that kind of thing that we've done in this community. The CEO of Darkness Delight was here about 3 weeks ago, and she was here, and we'll be talking to her more next week about developing a new set of trainings within the organization to replace older dated materials. And we'll use some of our best practices to develop. One of the fun facts we had was that we have the largest training in Foxborough of any of their sites in the whole world, which I found was interesting. And I think all this is fine. We know there is a need for so much more, as there is still abuse happening. And we owe it to the kids to be more vigilant and spread the awareness. So, no matter how hard we try, there's always more we can do. Like, just the time we've had of the COVID issues, all those kids were locked in their houses, sometimes with some of their attackers, sometimes not. But there was so many issues that we could probably have helped more, but it was frustrating to see it happening. And so anyways, that's all I got. All set?
Thank you.
I have a quick question too. With COVID and I know we've talked about with Tony from the YMCA being gone, do you feel like we're in a good place training and retraining people, or we have some work to do there, especially like town hall, school employees, coaches, all that, with COVID, how has that affected everything? And
Well, the school has continued on just like nothing happened. They have their training every year. When you become a teacher or a bus driver, anybody in the school department, you get trained. That's automatic. Police and fire, same thing. Town hall now has a great program. Christina's got everybody in line, and that's happening. We fell behind somewhat with the sports training. We're getting into that again.
okay.
Now, something we just had recently was a training at the Orpheum, and they had a wide range of different groups there. Not just the theater employees, but the dance people. There was people from the Y there. There was people from all kinds of. I thought that was one of the better trainings we had because it was such a diverse group of people. So we're never done training. Never. I'm never satisfied that we've done enough. So you can see recently there was something else happening at Foxborough. And now, the only way you're gonna catch people is if people bring up their suspicions, that kind of thing. As far as, what's that test? When people are hired, what's that
Corey?
Corey? Honest with you, that's useless, because that's just, you have to be caught to show up and convicted to show up on that. So, people put too much credence in the usefulness of that. So it really has to do more of how we train people, how aware they are, if they just feel something, need to say something, just like all the other kind of police type things. I'm not satisfied, no. That's a short answer.
Okay. All right, well,
So Leah, there's a motion.
Yep.
Is the donor actually comfortable with us, his name's in the motion, so
his name's printed on the agenda too.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
His name
I
is
have-
public.
We
Just wanted to
did
make
talk
sure.
about that in our pre-meeting,
Okay, did you?
yeah.
All
I
right.
have two quick things.
Go.
Is this a repeat donor?
Yeah, well, we heard it in their last report.
Oh, okay.
Right.
He made,
In my head, I was like, am I
he
having
made
deja
out, he
vu
made out
or?
the check wrong accidentally.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So this is the same one that
Right.
it's not a second one, this is,
No.
okay.
He upped the amount a
But
little.
this is,
But the
yeah, this
amount's
is,
better, though.
yeah. And the other thing I just wanted to quickly say is my daughter has taken the training because she's a town employee at the booth camp, and it follows them. She's an RA now in school, and just like when she was applying for that, just like anything you can put down that you've already had training in, and, you know, so it's a great thing that you're doing, you know?
That's awesome.
And the people that are trained will carry it forever, you know? And then hopefully if there are other things to look for as time goes on and your training changes a little bit, that maybe they'll retrain. But thank you for everything you guys do.
Yep. Thank-
All right, great, so I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay. So I'm going to pronounce this name the way I think it's pronounced, and let me know how I do.
We don't know either.
Motion to accept a $2,000 donation to the Child Sexual Abuse Awareness Committee from Mr. Dorian Valoris.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Great, thank you.
thank you very much for your work, and thank you
Thank
for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, we're slowly getting to Moore Street. One more item. So the next item is the special town meeting warrant. We need to close the warrant, so Bill, if you can just let us know where we are on that?
So thank you, Madam Chair. So we do have a total of 21 articles. Wow. That's more than I would have expected, but about half of them are zoning-related articles, so they're in the plan, with regard to planning issues. And so there's a wide range of issues, so they're not all finalized in terms of language, but they do have, they did make it into the warrant in terms of their consideration. So I would recommend that you close the warrant at this point with a motion I think Seth has.
And did we get any citizens petitions or anything that we haven't talked about before that's on there? Because we don't have an actual list at this point of what's on it.
So we will provide you the list for the next meeting for
Okay.
consideration.
Okay.
So I'm going to do this, I'll provide you a list probably by tomorrow, and then I'm going to also share it with the AdCom as well.
Okay, and did we get any citizen petitions or no?
No citizens petitions.
So if we close it, we cannot add?
That's correct. The board always has the option of reopening at any
Oh,
time.
I've had to do that for you.
You do, but there is, but right now, I would recommend you close it.
Okay, I mean, because normally I would have liked to have seen the list before we
Yeah,
closed it.
I thought we usually saw the list before we did this,
But
but
if we can reopen.
yeah, that we can. We have, I think we did.
And there's
Over the
there's a list, the list literally was being finalized as of this afternoon, so, because that's, people do submit it up at the last minute.
Okay. All right, any questions from anyone else? Nope. And just to remind everyone, that date for town meeting is the 18th?
15th.
Sorry, the
November 15th.
15th.
November
It's a Monday, 7:30, still Foxborough High School, right? No change of plans, so everyone that's here, mark that on your calendar. We'll almost have a quorum.
Motion to close the special town meeting warrant.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. So we're moving right on to Moore Street. Do we have Paige on? Paige, are you here?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna, before Paige kind of helps set the stage, since we do have a pretty big room here, has everyone that wants to speak added their name to this list? Or if you want me to skip over you, I certainly can when your time comes, but I just want to remind everyone that this is not a public hearing. So we do want to hear from you guys, and we're gonna hear from you guys, although, it's not a public hearing. But I just want to set a couple of ground rules. So we will limit you, probably I'm thinking like 3 minutes per person. If you've written a letter, we've all received the letter. Even if you just sent it in to me, I made sure that it got in board docs, so everyone has all those letters. If you've spoken in a previous meeting, we've all heard those comments as well. So just try to be mindful of that, when you get up, if it's something that you've already spoken to before in a prior meeting. Do we have a question?
May I ask a question?
Yep.
We're here for something different.
Okay.
And we were told we were on the list, and we just wanted to know.
What are you here for?
The Powder House, we're having a Powder House reunion, and we told we had to come up. We wrote a letter.
Is this a block party?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we
Well,
on the list?
You are on the list. We did not need you here, but since you're here and you both look so lovely, why don't you come on up? And if you guys don't mind, we'll just take that quickly out of order.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, come on up. So you're either here for Joanna Drive or Howard. I'm gonna guess you guys are Howard based on the address in Powder House. Okay, all right. So just tell us your names quickly, the dates of the block party. I know you guys have done this before. This isn't a new block party, right? I don't even live there and I know about it.
My name is Nancy Damashok, and I live on 7 Howard Ave, right behind.
Microphone, if you
Mike,
could.
Sorry.
Thank you.
My name is Nancy Damashok, and I live on 7 Howard Ave.
Rita Greeley, 69 Carpenter Street.
Sandy Vaughn, 75 Carpenter Street.
And Mark Vaughn, 75 Carpenter Street.
And that's on the corner of Howard Ave. and
Okay,
Carpenter.
all right, great.
So we've had block parties many over the years. For probably 24 years, we've been a very close, family-oriented neighborhood, and so we just wanted to have a reunion, Powder House reunion, especially after COVID. And we have people that are coming back that have moved away, and the children that are all grown up now, and we're all just having a big outdoor festivities, and we just requested to close off Howard Ave.
Okay, great. Like I said, I've heard about this block party before, so I know you guys have done this before. Thank you to the board too, and everyone in the audience for letting us just take this out of order so they don't have to stay here for their party. So I think with that, if there's any questions from the board, I don't know, we have a complete application. I think we're ready for a motion.
Motion to approve a block party application from Rita Greeley for October 2nd, 2021, from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Howard Avenue from Carpenter Street to Shaw Place.
second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you so much. I actually know someone who moved to Shaw, and they said they wanted to move there. They had heard about the block party. Okay?
I'm sure they're coming.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Starts
All
at
right,
1,
thank
right?
you.
You there at 1 or?
Yes, it is. It's
Okay.
at 1. We're actually doing something at 10 for the older people.
Oh, nice.
To look back at our videos
Oh.
and things like that. So.
What a special neighborhood then. Enjoy. Thank you. All right, great. Thank you everyone so much for your patience on that. All right, so just as I was saying, everyone will have about 3 minutes. If I can just ask you, it's really distracting when someone's making a comment or we're talking and then the group starts talking or shouting out comments from the audience. So if I can just ask you to just, be respectful of us trying to listen and hear the person that's speaking or the board that's having the conversation, it's very much appreciated. So we will get to the comments, I think, in a little bit. Do you guys have any sort of presentation or anything you want to make first before we do that? Okay. Anything, do you guys want to hear the comments from the neighbors or interested parties first before we have our conversation? To me, that is what makes most sense.
I think you're right.
Okay. All right, so why don't we have Paige, I know you've done this spiel before. If you can give your intro to maybe anyone watching at home that has not heard about this. This is a little different. It's not something we as a board have seen before. So I think it just deserves a little bit of stage setting as far as why is it's here and not through the normal process.
Sure, thanks, Leah. So this application of the 119 Moore Street Trust Project involves 52 units, and it's being filed with the Board of Selectmen under what's called a local initiative program. And what that means is the selectmen are not approving the plan and they're not necessarily signing on to all the details, but they're endorsing the plan in a way that says that they agree that Foxborough needs more housing or somehow supports this housing project to move to the next level. This is part of the 40B program. Regardless of whether the selectmen sign on to this or not, the applicant still has the ability to file at the state to receive site eligibility, and then would go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for ultimate approval. So that's where the approval authority actually lies. The reason they have applied to the selectmen is it makes them eligible under the LIP program. And I believe the major benefit of that is it opens up some different financing options just by being through a different program. But again, it doesn't tie the Zoning Board of Appeals hands. It does not mandate anything, but it does indicate that there's broad support for housing, or this project, and the support for affordable housing in Foxborough. And so tonight, I think we're just at the point you had a site visit, and you are now at the point of, I guess, hearing from neighbors. I see that there's a lot there, and then really discussing it as a board. I don't think you've fully had a discussion yet.
Yeah, so we've heard a lot of information. We've heard from some neighbors, and then since last time, we actually went out and had a site visit, and the full board was able to attend that site visit. You know, many of us have driven by the property a number of times, but to get out at the property and walk over the bridge and, you know, have Jeremy, who's the architect, kind of point to where things will be. You know, there's some questions, maybe some misconceptions about, you know, the size of the lot or how many units or where things will be. So it was definitely, I'm a visual person. It was helpful for me to go out there and kind of see it and stand and do a 360 and look around. So, you know, before we get started, just to reiterate some of what Paige said, this is not a meeting where this project is decided tonight if it goes forward or not. This is a meeting to decide if we sign on as an LIP for this to move forward. It would then go through all the same normal channels. There would be public hearings through zoning and other groups. You know, conservation would weigh in, although conservation was out there with us, just so everyone that is watching at home knows that Jane did attend that site visit from conservation with us as well. So this is really step one of us determining if there is a need for affordable housing in town. And then the project would go through all the normal channels that you would see, you know, to determine you know, the sewer connection okay, the water pipes, the number of units. So we're not looking at all that, although we may have some ideas. We may say, you know, this piece of it doesn't work, or here's a stipulation we would like to put in place. I don't think any of us would say that we're the experts to be able to go through all those items or even know what all the stipulations are that we want to, you know, put in place, given that there's so many boards that have the experience that weigh in on those particular areas. Any other comments just before we open up setting the stage type of comments from the board or from Bill? No?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so did everyone have a chance to sign in here that wants to speak? No? Okay. All right, if you don't mind, I will take Mark Powers of 44 Prospect Street while you just sign in, and then I'm just going to probably go in order. And if you see me looking at my phone, I am just going to set a quick timer just to kind of keep us honest and on track.
Thank you, and I'll try and be brief. And for those of you who do not know me, my name is Mark Powers. I live at 44 Prospect Street. I primarily want to talk about town zoning and how we got here. About 2 years ago, there was a survey that was put out by MAPC, and it asked the town to rank, by choice, what were the important priorities of the town. I think Paige would probably tell you there were 12 or 13.
Yeah, and I think everyone here has seen the end housing production plan as well.
Okay. No, it was the survey prior to the housing production plan. And the first two items were high taxes and helping seniors stay in their homes. The last two items were affordable housing and high-density housing in town. So when the housing production plan came out, I was, quite frankly, a little, stunned, because it looked like everything had been flipped. All of a sudden, affordable housing and high-density housing became the number one priority of the HPP. So, I question, who are we listening to in this process? It's nothing about, we're talking about Moore Street tonight, but we're talking about more than Moore Street on the global view of what's going to happen to our town. I heard Paige a few meetings ago talk about the formula that's used by the state to determine how do you get to 10%. And she didn't seem very happy that the lodge and the other big apartment complex was included. But I would say the state makes the formula, not the town of Foxborough. There wasn't a special formula used here. I also didn't hear that night any talk about the RFP that's going out to add 250 affordable units on Walnut Street. Every one of those will be affordable. Every one of those will count towards that figure and push us even further above the 40B limit. That's important. When, in the package that was presented on May 4th, 2021, Paige wrote a letter to Mr. Say. And in the first paragraph of that letter, she's expounding upon her conversation on housing that began in April 2019. And then one sentence stood out to me. She says that residents are frustrated by the high cost of housing in Foxborough and yet are oftentimes not supportive of increasing supply due to NIMBY concerns. Now, as a resident, as a taxpayer, I find that phrase NIMBY a pretty broad brush, and I don't like being painted with it, because I think there are people who have very legitimate concerns about where our town is going. Concerns such as, are our taxes going to keep going up? And by how much? What's the quality of our schools? And how do we maintain the quality of our schools? Where does our public safety go? And how can we keep adding, if need be, because of increased population, officers and firefighters and highway employees to keep things in order in our town? There's the whole issue of open space. What's going to happen to open space if this keeps occurring? So I don't like hearing NIMBY, because to me, if you oppose this, you're immediately branded a NIMBY. And that's not the case. People give thought, they give time, consideration to what are we doing in this town? And where are we going to be in 2, 5, 10 years? You know, where is the town population and how do we handle it? That's what is concerning to a lot of people. It's not that simple. I don't want it in my backyard and I don't want anything built. We have zoning. Zoning allows for building. If this goes through, there'll be very little town oversight. I mean, what I heard Paige say is if it were approved at the state, it goes to the ZBA, not the planning board, as you stated, Leah. So I don't know, maybe that needs clarification, because I did not hear that when it was brought up. I also see this as precedent setting. There are a number of large pieces of land in town that are going to be coming on the market, or already are on the market, that if you allow this type of project to go through, why wouldn't somebody else come and ask for it? And how would you say no? There's 10 acres of land behind the Dairy Queen. Just what we would need is something with this density impacting that end of the town up there. But if you've already set the precedent of taking this piece of property on Moore Street, and the neighbors had said the street really can't handle the traffic, then how do you say no to somebody else? We have Schneider, which is shutting down Neponset Street. That's about a mile on one side, probably 3/4 of a mile on the other side. That's not going to become industrial. The hat factory is not coming back. People aren't wearing boaters anymore. My guess is that would be very attractive to a large developer who sees a lot of homes. So that's in the R15 district. That already allows for apartment buildings, duplexes, triplexes, and single-family housing. That's already zoned for it. That's a place that's going to see a lot built up. We need to look towards that.
We're already well above the 3 minutes, so just want to make sure you're okay.
All right, then we'll wrap it up
Yep.
and take it on home. I ask you, please, use common sense, not emotional pleas. Respect our town zoning and enforce it. Don't throw it out the window. We have zoning for a reason. We should keep our zoning. We should not sign on to endorse this project. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Paige, can you just confirm, because again, I will make no claim that I'm the expert on how things fall at planning and zoning board, but this will go to ZBA, we know that. Due to the nature of the project, would it go to planning board or no?
No.
No, okay, thank you. All right, next we have Mr. Bowden, 89 Moore Street. And you can either use the podium or the table, whichever you're more comfortable with. Okay.
My name is Bruce Bowden, 89 Moore Street. I really don't have too much more to say. Everything I thought of was just brought forth. The one thing that I do want to bring up is how this is going to affect our neighborhood. When I moved here in 1978, the traffic going by my street was moderate to almost non-existent. What I think is going to happen here, if we approve this, is that the traffic is going to be something like a state highway, because Moore Street is the direct route to the Mansfield train station. If we allow the number of units that is going to be placed in this 6-acre lot, I fear that the traffic is going to be so bad that the whole neighborhood will be changed. I have no adverse opinion as to the 6 acres being developed. However, to pack in 52, 60, or whatever it is into a 6-acre lot is kind of like being in South Boston. You could probably take the salt shaker off the table next door because the houses are going to be so close together. I just don't think that we should void the zoning requirements to allow this, because I think this is just a money-making project.
All right, thank you. So we've definitely heard about the traffic last meeting, this meeting, and in your letters. So if I can just ask you guys if you have anything, kind of new to add when you get up as well. All right, next we have Mr. and Mrs. Vanden Boom. I don't know if you want to get up individually or you're going to get up together. It's totally up to you guys.
Can we go last?
Yeah.
Can you let others, do we have to go in order?
Yeah, that's fine. Mr. Muldoon, I see you up. Let's take you since you're up.
I want to be very brief.
And Mr. Muldoon is at 112 Cocasset Street, Unit 7, and he did join us on our site visit as well.
That was part of my expertise, that I was the only civilian there with my friend Charles. With the rest, all the selectmen, the zoning, Kevin,
Conservation,
planning, everybody was there, but there was only 2 residents. I was one of them.
Yeah, and it was a public meeting.
I know, exactly. Now, should I tell my name?
I did that for you.
Let me
Okay,
speak
okay.
for myself.
I thought you asked me a question, sorry.
You're all right. Arthur Muldoon. I live in a condo, Cocasset Commons, and 112 Cocasset Street, Unit 7. I've been a resident of Foxborough for 45 years. In my youth, I was a young 17-year-old union apprentice bricklayer. So I've been in the construction industry for a few years. I had never been to the end of Moore Street because the only place I went was the Borough School. Why should I go there? So I went with a friend of mine about a week ago, or 2 weeks, before the August 30th meeting. And I said, well, where does this end? And we kept going and going and going. And I couldn't find the place because I can't see. I'm legally blind, but if there's a penny on the parking lot, I could see it. So we went there, and I said, gee, I've never been here. And I said, why don't we keep going? And all of a sudden, I think I was in Mansfield. I said, gee, that's close. And we kept going, and I saw that we ended up near the railroad station. I had never been on this road to the end. There was no need. So then we knew there was going to be a meeting, so I wanted to walk the site. We got there, my friend and I, about a half hour before, and I just took a walk around to see. I had been on sites before, and I said, nice site. And then I said to myself, gee, I don't think there's going to be any traffic on this street. If I was in Mansfield, I'd be complaining, because it looks to me as if the easiest way for me, and I'm lazy, I'd go to Mansfield, because it's only down the street. I don't think I'd be going to Cohasset Street. There would be no need for me. So I can't see anything about being more traffic on that street. Now, if we're getting a lot of traffic there, then we put up the signs. Close the street from 7 to 9, and that's it. Put an officer there and tell them why there's other ways to go to the train station. We've got a free parking spot right down the street. Tell Sharon people to stay where they're supposed to be. I don't want to see them, but nicely. I'm in favor of this project for a couple of reasons. It's going from industrial to residential, and the 25%, the 40B, I don't know what they call it. They have names for everything, but it would be, people could be eligible to get a condo at a reduced market rate, and I'm for that. And I don't think it will disrupt the town. I don't think if it does set a precedent, it might be a good precedent, but precedents have been broken very easily. It's not in stone. And the other thing is, I had never met this gentleman, Michael, and as the architect walked the group through, I asked Mike, I said, would you be open to an investor? He said no. So I was a day late and $1 short.
Thank you very much. And thank you for coming to the site visit too, like you said.
Thank you. I wish the whole town would go and look at the site.
Yeah. All right, next, I might butcher your name, Mr. Schleck. I know I've talked to you on the phone before too. There we go, sorry. Can you tell me how you pronounce your name again? Okay, all right, great. And your address is 13 Faxon Street, correct?
Correct.
All right,
Yeah.
great, thanks.
I'm not going to waste a lot of time echoing some of the things that Mr. Powers said, but I just think that this proposal is not in the short or long-term interests collectively of the residents of Foxborough. I think that people, have made significant investments to live here, and this is going to drive up taxes and potentially drive down property values. It's, excuse me. Am I okay to talk?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Okay. High-density housing is only going to introduce further demands on anything we can think of in this town. Fire, police, water, you name it. Schools, obviously, we can't control who's coming there. A great parallel would be, I'm sure this room has a capacity, and that capacity has been defined for certain criteria. Can I just simply say, if the capacity is 100, I think we should have 250 people in here? There would be repercussions if we did that. We all know that. There are reasons why there's a capacity for this room. There's a reason why we have zoning. We have a certain number of residents in the town. It's not like we have 20,000 residents and only 17,000 of them have a home, and 3,000 are, wandering a parking lot somewhere. That is not the case. This would be drawing more and more people in. As Mark said, it would be a precedent. We would be seeing more and more of these types of developments. And I don't care whether it's low cost or high cost. If someone was proposing a high-rise of, $1 million units in there, I don't think this town can afford it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have Michelle Callahan, 40 Ridge Road. And again, if you're more comfortable at the table or podium, it's up to you.
I'm here on behalf of Jill.
Okay. Thank you.
Again, I'm here on behalf of Gil Campos of Remax. He could not be here, so.
Speak up, please.
Sorry. So I offered to read this letter for him. Let's see, to the board, I have my glasses on though for this. I'm getting old.
Just as loud as you can too, Michelle.
I will do that.
Thanks.
To the Board of Select Persons, my name is Gil Campos. I grew up in Foxborough, and I have been a real estate broker in town for over 40 years, and on those grounds wish to express my opinion on the proposed development located at 119 Moore Street that is under your consideration. Over the years, it has been my common experience that as it is time for townspeople to downsize into smaller, one-level living conditions, it is increasingly difficult for them to do so while remaining in the town that they have come to love. Time and time again, I have sold property out of town to people that have been a part of this community for years. Many have raised their children here and wish to remain close to family as they age. The harsh reality is there is a shortage of homes that fit those circumstances. Price is, of course, a major obstacle, but represents only one concern. Another concern is taking care of property grounds and repairs to the dwelling. In addition, many people leaving their larger homes require first-floor bedrooms or one-floor living. It is my professional opinion that this project answers these concerns. For some of our residents, it is a well-thought-out project of the right density to provide attractively priced homes that would provide 40 out of 52 units with one-floor living. The remaining 12 homes are designated with first-floor bedroom suites. 13 units will be deemed affordable by the 40B designation. What that means in real terms is that these units must be sold to people with an income of $60,000 to $90,000 per year. As a reference point, the average teacher in town is paid a salary of $60,000 to $90,000 a year. Oh, I'm sorry, no. Teacher in town is paid a salary of $57,000 per year. The average salary of a Foxborough police officer is $52,000 per year. As for firefighters in town, their salary averages $45,000, and town employees average $42,000. Considering overtime and possible spousal income, these are some of the people this neighborhood could serve. Furthermore, the demographics of this neighborhood, in large, should not strain the town resources. Firstly, the condominium association would be responsible for the road maintenance and snow plowing. Secondly, the concern over additional traffic is, in my opinion, unfounded, as the neighborhood would be on the outskirts of town and residents will make common use of roads outside the center of town in school districts. In closing, it is my belief that this neighborhood is a forward-thinking and well-designed opportunity for Foxborough to provide its citizens with a well-timed alternative to moving out of Foxborough. I also am a resident and have been all my life, and I agree that it really would benefit the town.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
All right, we have Teresa Howe of 101 Morse. No? Ms. Howe spoke last time. We all were here for your comments, so. Thank you. I did drive by your house and you have a beautiful hydrangea out front. Is that your house? Yes. Caught my eye on the way by. Okay. All right. Drew Hoyt.
Could we jump in front of Drew, please? We're sort of together.
Okay. Yep, that's fine.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
I think is someone.
Yeah, I got it.
Hold on one second. I just want to make sure they're muted before you guys get started.
We do have Greg Spear who would like to speak at some point.
Okay, we'll take him. We'll take him after this if you don't mind.
Sure.
Just making sure that he's muted. Okay, I see he's muted now. I just don't want him to interrupt you guys.
Well, thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak again. I'm Carl Vandenboom. I'm the abutter to this project. And little history about me. 57 years old, lived in Foxborough my whole life. I've lived at this property for 45 years. I know this property like the back of my hand. I was remiss in our other meeting to tell you what I'm going to tell you right now. I was 13 years old when I moved to this property. My dad and mom knew about the history of the land around my property. I was instructed by my parents at that time, a punk of 13, never to go in these woods. Why, Dad? There's bad stuff out there. You think a 13-year-old kid listened to his parents? Like I said, I know these woods like the back of my hand. I know I've pretty much gone in areas that I shouldn't have gone in because they were restricted at that time. My wife's told me I only have 30 seconds, so I'll be quick. You're going to hear a little bit
I've
about...
got 2 minutes, just.
You're going to hear a little bit about the history of this land, not only where the parcel is being developed, but the surrounding property as well. I think this is very eye-opening. I know a few of you, and I know a few of you have been in town for quite a while. I'm really shocked that this project has actually got this far. I know Mr. Saig was approved of a project back in 2008, and if it actually got to the construction phase, I would have taken it to the level that my wife and I are taking this issue to right now. Again, I'll leave that to Drew Hoyt, our attorney, but there's some eye-opening information about this property. I will defer to Drew when it's his turn. The one other thing I want to say is, you know, obviously we've read everything to do with this project, everything that we're privy to anyway, and I take great exception with the staff report that was produced on August 11th. There were many committees that got together and spoke about this project, again, without knowing the history of this parcel of land. One of the biggest exceptions I have, it's in the report, you know, and you've all read it. They said this area is blighted. This area of town, the past landowner there, his name was Arthur Kelly. One of the best neighbors anyone could ask for, and family. Arthur was a landscaper in town. Unfortunately, Arthur just passed away a short time ago. That property was meticulously maintained to the point where my wife and I had our photos taken on that property, on Arthur's side of the bridge. Wedding photos, I should have clarified that. Out on the conservation side of, the other side of the bridge, the conservation triangle area, was also beautifully maintained by Arthur Kelly. I don't think the Conservation Committee even knew like that was part of their area because Arthur took care of that so beautifully. The reason I take exception with that comment that it was blighted, it wasn't blighted 13 years ago. There's a correlation there. You guys are intelligent, I'll let you put that together. Huge, huge, huge issue with that one statement, many statements in there, but that one really, really got to me. My parents moved there for the view, the privacy, the wildlife, and as we've come to know, the neighbors. That's pretty much all I got to say right now. Thank you for your time. I'll defer to my wife.
Thanks.
Do I get my own 3 minutes?
2.5
Do I
minutes.
get my own 3 minutes?
Okay, as long as you keep it, when you hear that timer go off, just be aware of it.
I'm actually going in a I think that there's a lot of angles that we're all taking around this, and I'm actually taking a different angle. At the last meeting, you had said that the board is posed with 2 questions here. One is there a need for this kind of housing? And the second question is the location appropriate for this kind of project? And I feel like when Paige was introducing this, she skipped right over that one. She said, we're here to just find out, broad-based, do we need 40B? Do we want 40B? Is 40B a good thing? Nothing about question number 2. So what I really want to kind of focus on is what is the data about that we're collecting about whether or not this is the appropriate location? And we have a Foxborough Civic Engagement Focus Group. This was in my letter to you, but they were tasked with identifying some housing solutions, and when they were asked that, the top 3 criteria that they had put forth is that any new housing would not impact the quality and cost of municipal services, which I think this will. And number 2, does not negatively impact wetlands, wildlife, and habitat. If that is the number 2, and the third one's traffic, I won't go there. But if number 2 is the wetlands and the habitat, I don't think you could find a worse place to choose to put this. You know, there are other places, as Mr. Powers suggested, that will be upcoming. We have exceeded our 40B. Why are we pushing so hard right now to put this in here
when there are more suitable parcels that may come available in the next few years. So why are we pushing this one when, I don't know where Paige is getting the data or the idea that the town has said, we need 40B, period. Let's just go. That's not what the town said. The town, we do these surveys. It's like, they'll say something like, do you think that we need a movie theater, a stadium, or a Friendly's? Well, you're going to pick Friendly's because it's the only one we don't already have. These surveys that sometimes the town puts out are very guided. Yeah, for us, the recent one was, do you want, more fields or a dog park? Well, we already have enough fields, so people just pick dog park. And then I have issues with a lot of the surveys in terms of, sometimes people just want to say on open space surveys, just leave the space alone. But it's never an option. It's always, so people pick trails. So Paige and Jane were saying that it would be great, this area, we could put trails out into this, and Drew will get into why we don't want trails into this area. But, people didn't really want trails. We have a beautiful state forest. We have Lane properties. There's no other option closer to leave it alone than just make trails in the woods. So I have issues with sometimes the way that planning kind of guides us into these decisions. Like tonight it was, unless you have a real good reason to vehemently oppose 40B, then you should just say yes. Nothing about, is this an appropriate place? Is this an appropriate time? How many things are in the pipeline right now? How many things do we have in the pipeline? So we're going to jump on this 40B and add that. So again, Drew has things more in line with what my husband had talked about, but I think that those were probably my main points. But one other thing I just want to say in terms of who's guiding this agenda, we moved to this place, or his family moved to this place because of the pond and the natural habitat. And, we wonder what happened to Foxborough's values. Now they want all this density. What happened? I don't think Foxborough, the residents, changed their values. I think these are still the values of the residents. It's this other agenda coming from the planning board, I guess, toward a different type of Foxborough. So when you look at people asking on those surveys, can we just have a category called leave the space alone? When you look at what the civic engagement group said, which was, can we, we do not want to impact habitat and wildlife as the number 2 thing that they wanted to protect. Then, and just our zoning laws in general, that we as a town agreed this should be a single family place. That's what that should be. Why does this fly in the face of all of the values that the residents keep saying time and time again in all of these surveys? And that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
All right, Mr. White?
If I may, and I know Paige can speak for herself, but I'm sorry. At no point is Paige pushing 40B. Paige is pushing or trying to push forward an agenda of affordable housing. And I think I think you're wrong in saying that Paige and putting her in the light of she's pushing 40B. Paige isn't pushing anything. Paige is, no, you just said that up at the podium, and I think that's wrong.
What I'm saying is I think sometimes the surveys that come out.
That's a different story, but you up there said.
I apologize. I didn't mean to say that she's trying to influence the town, but I think in the way that the surveys are written sometimes, and even in the way that this was brought up today, all we're asking you to do is to do a broad-based approval. And all of a sudden, the location dropped off of this whole discussion.
Well, and I don't think we did a site visit to evaluate the location.
We didn't know that was public either.
So,
We would have been there. We saw you outside our house, but we said, oh, that's them doing their thing. So, that was not a lack of concern. That was just a misunderstanding that we were even allowed to go.
Right.
It said the selectmen are going on a site visit. It didn't say.
No, was a posted, public meeting, just like Mr.
Misunderstanding that we didn't.
We live there, we don't need a site visit.
Yeah.
I've been back there more
But I mean, we
more
would've-
time
we
than you
would've-
guys.
But I'm saying, to say we're not evaluating the particular site is just also completely untrue. Our whole purpose of that visit was to evaluate the site.
Did you walk in the woods?
Right.
We didn't go,
Back property line?
we didn't go deep, but we were at the site and we reviewed the site.
Jane did.
Jane went pretty
We
deep.
couldn't even see Jane anymore, yeah. She was-
No, I apologize. I did not mean to say that she's trying to do some sinister thing here. I just think that the way that I feel when I talk to my friends and my neighbors, that people in Foxborough want to protect open space, and they want to protect the wetlands, and they want to protect, and it shows in the surveys, yet somehow we're running with this. The number one thing that Foxborough residents are saying is that we need more affordable housing, regardless of any other criteria. And I don't think that's what's happening. I think that when we look at the actual surveys, people are saying, well, you know, we could reduce taxes in a number of ways, and one of them is increased housing. But if we have increased housing, this is what we'd like to see. We don't want it to tax, we don't want density necessarily to tax the infrastructure. We don't want it to negatively impact wetlands and habitats and then traffic.
And I will say too,
those are the top three.
you know, while there's a lot of people who are here now, and I appreciate that, there have been meetings since pre-COVID with this room that you couldn't even move in it, where we've been talking about affordable housing. So, you know, this didn't just come out of a survey sent, and I know, you know, Mark has been there, and I've seen Mr. Muldoon there, and I'm pretty sure Gary has been at some others. I think I've seen, you know, Doc, but, you know, this is literally, like, we talk about affordable housing so much in other forums that maybe, you know, you guys may not have been aware of, just because it hasn't happened at this table. Just know.
We're
No,
aware.
that's-
Yeah, we
no,
have
no, that's-
talked ad
And we are
nauseum about
we are
affordable
proponents
housing.
of 40B, we get it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
I mean, God, that's what we're all about, right? Is
We're-
helping your fellow neighbor.
We're proponents of diversity, we're proponents of all of that. I just feel like sometimes what happens is these things rise to the top of the list where they were number 14 on, or whatever, out of, you know, and they become talking, that everybody's focused on, that this is the only solution. What about those 13 solutions above number 14? And is this, again, we have all of these things in the pipeline. Is this the time? Is this the place?
So respectfully, the way that you're positioning this makes it sound like it's a town-funded project, where clearly this is a private property owner who's bringing this to the town now. So that's why this is sort of rising now, is because this is what's on the
Right.
the
We
private
didn't
owner.
go out and seek someone.
Private
An
property is
application came
proposing
to
this.
us.
Oh, no,
so it's
I did not
going through the
suggest that you
process.
sought, no, I did not suggest that you sought this whatsoever. No, I'm just saying that
fair.
this has come to your attention.
Yep.
Is this the right, again, yet last meeting you said 2 criteria. Is this a need? Which I would say no, because we're over the 10%, we're 13%, but that's my opinion. And the second one is this the right location? And that seemed to drop off the conversation from the start of this. And I think that that's a very important piece, because where we're not under the 40B, it's really important that we pick the right place, and that it makes the most sense. And if there are other things coming up in the pipeline, other places that you can look at to say that would actually make a lot more sense, you know, I'm the abutter, of course, I have.
Yeah, and with that, I guess I'd just kind of close with, I can guarantee you, we're looking at both pieces. Is this the right site as well?
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that
And,
that's
yeah,
discussed.
we're aware of what's in the pipeline, roughly 400 units, and we're at the 13% of our 40B right now. 1/4% of 400 is another 100 units. You know, we're talking 10, 12 units in this parcel here. Yeah, it's a help, but it's not going to push us like up to 20% or something. So let's be cognizant of that too.
Madam Chair, just one clarification, though. I think it's important that people know that the so-called 400 units that you just described are rental units, predominantly. This is ownership. That's the significant difference in why
All
this,
400?
just about all 400, yeah, are going to be rentals.
There are some across from Stop and Shop, there's some on Cohasset Street, you know,
Regardless, we're still at 13%, right?
Right.
As of now.
Yeah, so with that, why don't we move on? We still have a couple speakers, so Mr. Hoyt will take you.
And again, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Mr. Hoyt, are you a Foxborough resident?
He is.
I am. I've lived in Foxborough I've lost track of however many years it is, since 2007, this go-around, and then I was here for a few years in a previous run. So yeah, I've been in Foxborough.
Just a reminder too, this is not a public hearing, that will come later. So just, you know, I know that you're a resident, but you seem to be representing them, but just, you know, keep that in mind. We do all have your letter.
Yep.
Everyone here has seen that's in board docs as well.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, I won't won't repeat what's in my letter. And again, I do represent the Vanden Booms, and I'm going to be representing them on some of their particular issues. But as you could tell from my letter, the concerns that I wrote about in my letter and that I want to just allude to again tonight really don't arise from that, but more from being a Foxborough resident, and in particular being an environmental attorney and formerly, working in the environmental protection where my job was to address contaminated sites and to protect the public from the health threats posed by contaminated sites. Saying in the environmental field that there's sort of two types of environmentalists. There's the tree huggers and the poison haters. And I'm a poison hater, so my job was all about dealing with contaminated sites and making sure they got cleaned up. I was the head of enforcement for the Northeast region for a number of years in the 21E program. And so when I saw this proposal, that was the first thing that came to my mind, because as I've been living in Foxborough for, however many years, I quickly learned about these environmental legacy sites that we have here in town, and we have a few bad ones, really bad ones that are intractable problems. The Evelyn Porter site being one, the Mansfield Bleachery site being another, and those two happen to be located near this development site. And that was the first thought that came to my mind, and that's what I wrote about in my letter. I really have 2 points to make, and again, I'm not going to repeat what's in my letter, although I do. I know I only sent it yesterday, and it's a fairly bulky submission, and I don't know how much time the board has had to spend with it. But I want to make 2 quick points. First, with respect to the board's role, I hope that you, don't mistake your role, and I'm not suggesting that you do mistake it. Your role is that you are, in this instance, in the LIP program, the town takes the place of the state. Typically, it's Mass Housing, which is quasi-governmental state agency that is the subsidizing agency that through which a 40B developer has to first go and get a project eligibility letter from Mass Housing. Without that, you can't get in the door at the Zoning Board of Appeals. And what Mass Housing does is it conducts a review to ensure that the project is both appropriate in size, scope, location, that it's economically feasible. And so there's a level of review that happens that's done by the staff at Mass Housing, and ultimately that results in the developer getting a project eligibility letter that allows them to go to the zoning board. In the LIP program, the selectmen take the place of the subsidizing agency. Normally, a 40B project has to be subsidized by a reduced interest rate loan, typically through Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston. That's the most common funding source. Or sometimes, for the really big projects, through one of the direct state subsidies, through DHCD. A 40B project doesn't count towards the town's 10% obligation unless it's subsidized by one of those special loan programs, unless it's a LIP approval. Because what a LIP approval or endorsement is, and that's what you'd be doing, you'd be endorsing the project. It's not a passive role. You become a sponsor of the project. You become the subsidizing agency. There is no reduced rate loan. There is no subsidy, direct or indirect. Your endorsement is the subsidy. Without it, the developer doesn't get in the door of the ZBA. This developer, if they don't get this LIP approval, what they will have to do is they will have to go to mass housing, and they will have to go through mass housing's review. And they'll have to find a bank that's a member of the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston to agree to fund their project with subsidized interest loan. So what your role is you are the sponsor, in the same way that a subsidizing agency like mass housing, together with a bank, would ordinarily be the sponsor and subsidizer of a project, right? So your role
That's
is...
point one? Is that your point? Is that where this
Yeah, we're already
That's
well
point one.
over
That's
3
point
minutes.
one,
Just
and I
keep it in
can
mind.
end
Yep.
it there.
Okay.
I just want to make... Okay, point two. So the connection is, you are under no obligation, as you know, to endorse this project. If you say no, the developer has no appeal, they can go to a bank. So you don't need to endorse this project.
Understood.
And you shouldn't. And the reason you shouldn't is that this project is on a site that you don't know is safe for housing. We don't know where the property is right next to, directly next to, a very bad industrial waste legacy site. And I've seen many sites, many 21E reports. I've seen very few, if any, where the known historical contamination and waste disposal was so expansive and so widespread across the site. And by the way, not just on the Mansfield Bleachery site, which the development parcel was once part of, but on town property. There are DEP maps and plans that show contamination from Mansfield Bleachery on the town property right on top of this development site. Not just on top of it, by the way, but assuming groundwater flows from, in the direction of Bleachery Pond, up gradient of it. So whatever's in the pile of, whatever's buried in the ground is likely the groundwater is flowing right through it and right through this development site afterwards. Based on what is known to have occurred at the Mansfield Bleachery site, directly adjacent and directly up gradient of this property, and how little investigation has been done, you cannot know that this property is safe. And you have good reason to think that it's not. And you have no reason to say that this site is appropriate for housing without knowing a lot more than you know right now. What needs to be done to know that this property would be an appropriate location for housing would be to test the soil for things like lead and other things that, if we're concerned about children ingesting lead in soil, you'd want to have groundwater sampling. The groundwater at the site, based on assuming it's similar to what's next door, it's only 2 to 3 feet below grade. If you've got volatile contaminants like solvents, trichloroethylene, or breakdown products of it, those things are giving off vapors that would go right into these homes.
Can I just interrupt you, because I don't want to get too deep on the 21E,
Right.
because we're not, just like the Zoning Board of Appeals, they'll need a 21E. And from what I understand, one may have been done. I don't know if one needs to be done again. But I don't think that what you're bringing up bypasses the normal 21E process that would be required to happen. Am I incorrect in that? So
Still required.
It will still be required on this site. So I don't think that the LIP program would be on a site that, a clean 21E, and I don't know, I'm just saying, has come up before, that the Board of Selectmen will be getting soil samples before, making a decision like that. So while I appreciate the history of the site, I do think that there's a time in the project, if it does happen later, that all that will be appropriately addressed.
I think it's a mistake to believe that if this board endorses this project, that there's any chance that the Zoning Board of Appeals would not approve it. I've been working on 40B projects both as a sponsor and an opponent for many years. In fact, I represent a 40B developer on the Cape. I have never, ever I am not familiar with a single instance in which a project with the Selectmen's endorsement through the LIP program has been rejected by the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is appointed by the Selectmen. It's an endorsement. It is not, whether or not it's permissible, it is
Yeah,
not.
I think he's done.
I think we're just gonna-
You
I'm
are under
sorry.
no obligation to punt this to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I'm begging you not to, at least not tonight. Please give it a month and think about the role, look at the environmental issues, come back and have just one opportunity to give a little thought to these issues on whether you really want to give it your endorsement tonight, as opposed to taking a little bit of time to maybe hear from the health agent, who I got an email from earlier today, who wants to speak with me about these issues. I don't know why you need to be in such a hurry. I'm not just asking you for, please don't do it tonight. Please give us a little bit of thought so we can have further discussion about this, and you can really think about the role that you want to have in this project, because you have a lot of discretion as to the role you play. You could choose to punt to the ZBA, or you could choose not to.
And I don't
I'm
think
asking you
it's,
not to.
I don't think it's punting to the ZBA, it's following the process that's set in place. So,
You know something? We are not following the process, though.
no,
This-
for,
the process should never.
for a
should-
LIP
yeah.
program would go to the ZBA. It's not us, and I'm not talking about this project, I'm talking about the LIP process, would go to the ZBA. So by no means, whether we, approve it or not, this board does not make decisions and punt things. We take things very seriously. And this may be the first time, Mr. Hoyt, that we're seeing you and that we got your letter yesterday, but this is at least the third meeting that we've had on this. So we do not take this very lightly, and we will not be making a decision that we're thinking about overnight. I can promise you that.
No offense intended. I just
And I
mean
think
you can choose to take on what part of this you want, or to give the
I think he's
ZBA
done.
what
Yeah,
part of it you
I think
want.
you're done, but I just have to be firm that just because this is your first time here does not mean that we take this lightly, that we're punting to anyone,
Not
or that
suggesting
we're
you
making a
take-
decision
I was not
overnight.
suggesting you take it lightly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you know something? Maybe I was the only, I did not take anything he said offensive.
See,
I-
I'm
No, I'm not offended, I'm just clarifying.
No, but Leah, your tone came up, and your tone came like that we were not doing due diligence, and I don't think that's what he was suggesting. But I will tell you that I know we all take this very seriously, but when these issues come up, I have lots of issues with this project, okay? And if Mr. Saig can bypass us and go to the state and go to zoning, then I don't think we need to put ourselves in this position. So, I mean, that's my opinion. I'm not saying that's the opinion of the board, but I will say, in all due respect, you and Doc your voices came up and like he was insulting us. And I don't know.
I have to say, saying that we're taking
Okay.
it lightly, punting,
But I don't
or
think he
making a decision overnight,
I don't think that's-
and
okay.
no offense to you, I just know it's the
Yeah.
first time we've seen you, so I'm
Yeah.
making sure you have the history of what has gone on. Is really the biggest thing.
I'm sorry, there's no way our zoning board of appeal would do anything outside their realm just because we approved or disapproved anything. Absolutely not.
We don't even know, honestly, Steph, we don't even know if we're taking a vote tonight. Who knows?
Oh,
We might not take a vote tonight.
I just felt like both you and Doc all of a sudden get very like, he's done. He says, I'll be honest with you, I was interested in what he had to say. I know we have his letter, but I just feel like the two of you all of a sudden got a little defensive.
And I was interested to hear too, and that's why he probably spoke
Yeah.
for 6 to 7 minutes.
I just don't think he was trying to be, I think we got a little defensive. I don't think he was saying that we didn't take it seriously. I think he was just explaining the process and maybe urging us to give it some time. I just want to make sure, because I felt like the two of you started to attack him, and I didn't take it that way at all. It could be just my opinion.
And I honestly, Steph, I take offense to attacking, because there's people in this room that we maybe haven't seen before. And not only for Mr. Hoyt, I want to make sure anyone that's watching at home or is in this audience knows that we, again, just because you're here tonight does not mean that we are rushing this through, punting or, all the things that I've said.
I think my sense was that this was the town's first LIP project, and that some of the town's role in the LIP process was something that was a subject of discussion. So that was my point.
Okay. I'm just going to take. Yeah, go ahead.
That's the longest 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I I wanted to hear what he said too, and that's why I let him
it
go,
off.
you know,
Yeah.
a long time, so.
I think his points are understood and,
Yep.
and well taken.
And
so I think
appreciated,
we can,
you know?
Thank you.
we can move on. Thank you.
All right, so do we have anyone else besides Mr. Spear on the phone?
Just Mr. Caspera with the group, Paige and Chris, so
Okay.
nobody else.
All right, so Mr. Spear, we don't have your address here. Do you mind just telling us your name and your address? And I think you're still on mute. Just let us make sure we've got you here. Are you going to come on camera?
I'm trying to get on camera, but I
Okay.
can't figure it out. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you turn it up just a little bit, Mr. Beck? Thank you.
All right, let me see if I can start my
And I'm just adding your name to the list here, Greg.
There you go.
Okay, that's great. All right, thank you. I didn't want to go into repeating what Michelle Callahan said about Guild Campus's thoughts, but
Just tell us your
I just
address, Greg.
have, one Hutchins Drive, Foxborough.
Thank you.
And I'm a developer out of Foxborough, which have done mostly high-end developments in town. And our last one was the only one that was specializing in first floor masters. And the project started probably around 750, and the last one we sold was 1.2 million. And our houses never reached the market for more than 30 days. Mr. Campus did the marketing. There's a huge demand right now for all the baby boomers that are aging to be able to find a place for the first floor master. And there's a lot of people that would be willing to move out of 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath houses that are looking for, they want to stay in town. They want to stay in a first floor master in a smaller house that serves their needs, which would free up to other family in town their existing larger house. I take a little bit of concern that people are mentioning other projects that are in the pipeline regarding other developments. This is the only one that's in front of the planning board and the only one that's in front of the selectmen or in front of the town that would service something in the $500,000 to $600,000 price range. There's no other development. We can wishful think about, Invincis or, Schneider Electric, but those aren't in the pipeline. They might be in the future, but this is right now. There's a huge demand for housing. Prices continue to increase, and there's a lot of, residents that want to stay in town for a smaller unit. And I think, what is going on up at the fire station, I'm not sure if those are for sale or for rent, but this is the only one that I'm aware of that's actually a for sale that's available. And putting on my other hat, I'm chairman of the Foxborough Housing Authority, and we have over 2,000 people that are on a waiting list for affordable housing in Foxborough. It's a statewide list, but I think it's worth noting that any product that's out there that's going to serve a need that's not, reaching the upper end of what is affordable, isn't affordable, but market rate, I think would be a big help to allow families to stay in town. So I'm going to keep it short. I understand the location might have some concerns, but in my mind, it's actually located closer to Mansfield, and the impact on Moore Street, I would say a traffic study would do. And my final comment is my dad was actually the one that renovated the house for Arthur Kelly many years ago. They redid the bridge, and Arthur was meticulous with the property. But, something he sold to Mr. Say, he's looked at possibly doing industrial, and there's no market for that right now. So this is today's market, what's in front of you, and it is something that the selectmen can make a decision on the WIP program. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Got everyone? Yes? All right, so I know I have a couple questions. I would like to hear, I don't know who the right person from the team is, maybe we heard so much about 21E. Like, I'm curious, I think I heard there was a 21E done on the site. Mr. Buckley, I don't know, seems like you're the right one you're approaching. And I don't know if anyone else has questions for the group, and then I was thinking we can move on to discussion between us. And just because I have that question, if you have any others, while he's up here, go ahead and.
I actually don't know a lot about 21E, so just if you could explain what that is.
21E 101?
Just
Okay.
quick,
So my
super
name is
high
Bill
level.
Buckley, and I am not an environmental engineer, so I'm just going to speak. We got this letter yesterday. Actually, no, I got it this morning. So we've done a little bit of research in it. I spoke to Mr. Sag about it. So 21E is Mass General Law, Chapter 21E. It handles the contaminated sites within the Commonwealth. And everybody calls it a 21E because pretty much any commercial property that is purchased, they're going to say, oh, I want a 21E. So a 21E, an initial 21E is called a preliminary site assessment. And if you're going to get a loan from a bank, then the bank is going to require you to have this done for any commercial property, sometime for residential. So I asked Mike, hey, did you get a 21E done in 2007 when you purchased it? And yes, he did. So what I'd like to do is, and he's also told me that I can release this to the board, which I will. I can send it electronically if you would like to. But what I'd like to read is just a couple of paragraphs out of the page-and-a-half summary that was put together. So the report that was referenced earlier this evening, I think it was a 1991 report. It was commissioned by the US EPA for that site, and it had all the horrible things that we're talking about. It's also, I know this, but I just want to make sure everybody understands it. All the things that were talked about in that report did not have to do with this property that we're talking about tonight. It's talking about the bleachery property next door. So it's not this property, it has nothing to do with this property. When Mr. Sag had a 21E done for a preliminary site assessment, one of the things they do is they look at any, I don't know the technical term, but they're looking at any contaminated sites within the area that might impact the site. And then they would make a decision or a recommendation based on that. So let me just read a couple of paragraphs here, and I'll give it to you. And it talks about, and this was written about the project we're talking about, 119. The most recent information in the file at the DEP on the bleachery site, what is a site investigation closure completed for the EPA on July 30th, 1998, 7 years after the one we were just talking about earlier. This document had indicated that, quote, a removal action is not appropriate at this time, unquote, and, quote, the concentration levels for the contaminants found at this site during the preliminary assessment site investigation do not warrant a time-critical removal action at this time, unquote. Talking about that. Puts it in perspective. I think it paints a little bit less dire picture than what was painted earlier, just so you know. Was also some discussion about groundwater flowing from the bleachery onto our property. Let me just read that section about that. Extensive subsurface investigations from the late 80s to 2003 indicate that the groundwater beneath the Summit Casting site flows across the site to the south, where to the north, towards the Rumford River. In addition, the extent of the contaminated areas were localized in western and southern portions of the site. Again, we're to the north and the east. So it's not, contamination is not flowing toward us. According to this report, it's flowing away from us in the Summit Casting. And then finally, the last thing, which is what every phase one site assessment has to give you, is they have to make a recommendation on it. The recommendation, the consultant recommends no further environmental investigations or inspections are warranted or deemed necessary at this time. So that's what these people thought in 2007. They did not feel that a phase two was necessary. And a phase two would have been digging holes, pulling samples, testing for contamination. So that's our story on the 21E for the site. Before he purchased it, he had to have a 21E done. The bank had to approve it. And it's our opinion, with the information available at this time, that we don't have a 21E. We don't have a contamination issue on the site. I'm guessing, just a guess, that whatever bank Mr. Sag uses going forward is going to require another 21E. And just because this would be a 40B, it does not exempt us from any state permit requirements.
And what you just read was specific to this property at 119 Moore Street?
Yes, it was prepared by Theodore F. Lowe and Associates Environmental Site Assessment for 119 Moore Street,
2007.
October 17, 2007, which I'll make available to you.
Yes.
Perfect. And the guidelines, whether, so in 2007, it was possibly going to be a commercial project done there. Same guidelines either way, Bill? You know, like whether it was going to be residential, like there's not different guidelines for that report for a commercial or?
No. For
Okay.
a phase one, no.
Okay.
Once you go into, if there's contamination, I know there's all different tiers and stuff, but I don't really know anything about that.
And just because because of my real estate license, I know a little bit about the 21E. And the 21E that you had, was that for your purchase, your bank required you to have that at the time? It was not for the commercial project. So, you know, anytime you buy, even though there's a house on it, it's a commercial property, this will come up. So it was not tied to that project. But I think you bought it in 2008, right? So 2007 would just be for him to take the sale of that, just like probably if he turned around and sold it to someone else, and we didn't even know what they're gonna do to it. You'll need one of these if it's commercially zoned.
And if it would go 40B, the bank would possibly want another one done.
I would guess,
Possibly,
yes.
possibly,
It's
yeah.
12 years, 13 years
Yeah,
old.
okay.
And then the only other thing I'd just like to point out, a factual thing that was brought up multiple times, was people would like to see single-family housing in this area. And I know we've mentioned it before, but this is a general industrial area. This is zone general industrial. We keep talking about zoning. This is zone general industrial. No housing is allowed under our zoning in a general industrial zone. Just so you know that.
So it's non-conforming right now, is what you're
It's
saying?
non-conforming right now.
So did the zoning change after the existing house was there?
Yes.
Okay.
That house has probably been here since the 50s, and the zoning didn't come in until the end of the 50s or the early 60s.
Any other questions for them about, it doesn't have to be about 21E, but just about anything that you heard, or that you read, or the site visit?
I have a couple of questions. Just in the application, there, where it says accessory apartments, it says exemption requested. So does that mean that that you're asking the state to allow you to have accessory apartments? Is that what it means by asking for that exemption?
I don't know.
Okay. No, because, I'll be honest with you, like with the density there, I don't feel comfortable with us being able to do accessory apartments. I mean, that's what it says in the application. I was a little surprised that they were asking, that it's asking for an exemption. I just, maybe before we actually take a vote, or that maybe we can just find out what that means. Bill, you don't have any idea about that, do you?
He's on the line.
He is.
He might be a good person to ask.
And can you just point us to the page number stuff that you're on?
Coming online right now.
21.
Thank you.
Down almost near the bottom, section 8.1.
Yep, thank you.
I could, Stephanie, I could address that because I put in the exemptions. The bylaw has a section on accessory apartments, and that is if the applicant ever wanted to, or a homeowner wanted to put in an accessory apartment for an in-law. So that requires a special permit. So that is something that the zoning board could consider if an in-law wanted to put an apartment in there. The zoning board does not have to entertain that exemption. They could deny that if they wanted to. But that's why that would be in there if a homeowner wanted to put in an apartment for an in-law.
Yeah, so Bill, so you heard my concern.
Yep.
The density already going in, you know, to think of an accessory apartment going into anything there, is a little concerning to me, and especially because the accessory apartments, there's a lot of talk on them, and I think we may have a Warrant article coming up about it. I just think that with that density, I don't think we should even be making it an exemption to leave it to zoning. Well, I guess zoning board of appeals, that's what they do. So maybe I'm overstepping, but I can't imagine us wanting to have anybody with that type of density already then to be applying to add an accessory apartment off any building that's going to be there.
Well, that's certainly within your purview to make that, to delete that from in a recommendation if you decide to support this. That's certainly a recommendation that you could put in there. Again, that's a request, and the zoning board could not recommend that and take that out. But that's why it was in there, in case an in-law apartment, a homeowner wanted to put an in-law apartment in there. So that's why the exemption was put in there.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It sure does. I don't really care for it, but it answers the question.
Again,
Yeah,
that's a recommendation.
I just think with the density there, it would be bizarre to me that we would allow anything else to be added on there. That's my opinion. The other question I had was, I hate to use the word dog park or dog run or anything dog in this town. It tends to be a sore spot. But on the site plan, I reached out to Christina and had her, give me a paper copy, just because I couldn't read the little, like, looking on the computer, I couldn't look at the little writing. Now, I see here that on the site plan, I don't know if I missed it before, or if it was talked about, it says a potential dog run. So what is the dog, like?
I feel like we talked about that at the site visit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think we talked about it and said if we didn't think that was a good idea, we're happy to strike
Okay.
that. That was something
Well,
I had
we
put
were
in there.
broken up in, like, it wasn't like we were all in one
Yeah,
group.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I think
No, it's a good clarification.
Yeah.
So, that still shows it, because obviously we haven't resubmitted anything, but again, I think you guys can make a recommendation to remove that
Yeah,
option.
well, and just, truth be told, I'm a dog lover, dog owner, but there's a lot of, conflicting opinions about, and I did notice, I know, if I may, the Vanderbooms at one point, there was some talk about maybe another dog park, like across from where they live now, and I know it was a little concerning. And so I saw this and I thought to myself, oh, this is right abutting the abutters. And I was kind of like, I don't think that should be done to any abutter. If there was a better area for it, I'm not saying yes or no, but where it was here, I just thought to myself, if I were the abutter, and I love dogs. It's so funny, because if you say you don't support it, people think you don't like animals or you don't like dogs. And I just know my dog would bark all day because they could see the other dogs and hear dogs from there. So I was just a little, I must have missed the conversation about it when we were touring. But I was a little concerned about that as well.
So, just a couple thoughts I have, and I'm going to sound like I'm all over the place, because I got to tell you, I am all over the place. Some days I wake up and I think, this is good and it might make sense and we need affordable housing. And then sometimes I look at the site, and I think, gosh, kind of a sobering stat I read. I think it was Mrs. Vanderboom said, it's as many units as there is on Moore Street as on that spot. So I actually went and counted, and I think I came up, I'm not saying it's exactly accurate, but according to the public record, counting the duplexes that are there already, because there are already a lot of duplexes down that end of town. I came up with 71 units on Moore Street. So this application is 51, 71 are on the street right now. That stat kind of stuck with me, that I looked at myself. But on the flip side, I think really Mr. Campos's letter kind of sums it up perfectly. Right now, I just checked while we were sitting here, we have 8 active homes on the market at this second, or 20 minutes ago, when I just looked, in the town of Foxborough. The most affordable single-family unit was at $429,000. And I'll tell you, 3-4 years ago, that would probably, I don't even remember what house it was, so I'm not speaking about any house, but that would not have been, an almost $500,000 house. So we have sat in this room, we have sat on Zoom. I'm sure Paige can probably attest, the amount that we have heard about affordable housing is incredible. And it's all generations. It's, people starting out, I think if we look at some of the houses that were just built off of Belcher, I don't think I ever expected to see those going in the 7s, but there's a need. And that's what the market is, driving. People are looking to pay this amount because there's a need. So, from my perspective, and I kind of do want to hear from you guys. You don't have to, but I feel like we haven't had this conversation, which is what I want to have. There is a need for housing. And I have to say, I don't think any neighbor ever wants anything like this in their backyard. So do not think that we're taking this lightly. But, it is an industrial site. And when you stand there and you stand in the middle of the site and you look around, besides, really being in the driveway and seeing your house, which we absolutely, respect and understand that you guys in a butter, there's not a lot of abutters. So are there, maybe other sites in town that could be good too? Yes, but this is the one that's in front of us right now, and it does meet a lot of that criteria. And we have spent a lot of time, looking at the site. It has sewer. There's not a lot of abutters. Again, we appreciate there's some abutters, but compared to other sites, there's not. The bridge is a concern to me. And if we can't get a sidewalk on that bridge, I really don't think that's a good idea. That's another kind of pro and con that I've looked at. I've sat through Jeremy's presentations before in other meetings. I don't, know that but he's been in front of us before about this exact thing. And I've sat in the audience and thought, gosh, I would love to have, what you were showing in Plymouth or Cohasset, or I forget exactly what towns it was, Concord. It's like exactly what we need, some sort of like little cottage style, single families that we can, maybe that's the time to go and make it a little bit denser, but the fourplexes, those are a little bit tougher, for me to stomach. They are, apartment buildings. And, there's definitely a need for it. And, all these units we're talking about, they're all rental units. This is the only project that's in front of us right now that I understand that's on the docket that is ownership. And I know people that have bought and, across from Stop and Shop that grew up in town, even though people say I wouldn't want to live there. Or, I know someone that was in the lottery that didn't get in, and searched for a couple of years for a house that they could afford in town. So, there are a lot of pluses, there are a lot of minuses. I will say, I do think there's a need for affordable housing in town. I would say, this particular site, there are a lot of pros that I think that this is a good site. For me, the biggest thing, aside from everything else that's going to be vetted, like the 21Es and the sidewalks and the sewer line and the water and the bridge, is just the density. And it was that sobering, statistic that there's, approximately 71 units on Moore Street, and there's 52, on this whole site. So those are just some of my thoughts, and I'd like to, anyone else have any thoughts that they want to share just as we kind of have this discussion?
Yeah, I got a couple.
And I will come back to you. I just want to hear from the board, because we really haven't had, this conversation.
I think this project falls in line with what we have been seeing over the last few years. You and I have both been very much involved in the process. I think Mr. Saig, his project, I think he's going out of his way to try to make it as tasteful as possible. A lot of green area, a lot of trees still being kept there, working in and around the property as much as possible. I think the fact that he's already come out and saying he's going to keep the prices between $500 and $550, Mr. Saig, if I'm correct, not including the discounted 40B housing. And I think, with all that said, I think it's a perfect project for where it is and the timing of where we are in our housing crunch. Now, it might not be a crunch 2 years from now, but I think the prices are still going to be right where a lot of people need to be for their first starter home.
Anything else?
I have some comments, but those were my questions, but I'd be happy to let, Seth or Ed
Oh, please, Stephanie, go ahead.
first. Okay, so a lot of mine, I mean, I'm going to repeat some of the stuff, but I mean, it's, you know, as we're taking everything in, the problem is some of my concerns still rise to the top. You know, I can appreciate every commercial you hear for Mayor of Boston. You hear each one of them talk about affordable housing, okay? So I get that's the hot topic, okay? I guess where I struggle is I feel that my job on this board is to the existing taxpayers. So that's where I struggle a little bit with the project because, you know, I've lived in I've said this before, I live in a development that was made for first-time homeowners or downsizing. And that's not what it turned into because that's what people could afford. And I'm going to come right out and say there was no discrimination about young families, children, anything. I'm a mother. I've raised a family in Foxborough. I welcome families in Foxborough. The problem I have is when you hit this type of density, okay, and what I think might happen, if I had a crystal ball in front of me and could say, this is who's going to live there, who's not going to live there. I don't care. It has nothing to do about any type of bias or racist or anything about who will live in these houses. In my mind, I see the draw coming to maybe young couples because that's who's looking. We may get some downsizers. I guess my concern is if it goes to something similar, like what happened in Cannon Forge and Summerfield, we are going to get bombarded with lots of young families and lots of kids. Again, there's no bias. I love children, okay? So before someone says you can't mention kids, but I wonder what the impact then does become to our services, not just schools, everything, police, fire, water. So if this is what that turns, you know, into, how do we, there are so many people in Foxborough that are struggling. They're not in that they will even be able to qualify for affordable. I mean, whether it's seniors, whether it's just young people. I mean, heck, I mean, we're an average family. We don't make a lot of money. You know, we're in our little home because we couldn't afford the next home in Foxborough. So what I wonder is so what happens to the taxpayers if what happens is, Mr. Sagan, you know, you threw out a figure, $350,000 that would come in. So, I mean, I've done some math. It's easy. Being on advisory committee, we heard numbers of per pupil cost and you know, what each department, you know, zeroes in on what the cost is to provide services for a certain amount of people. So, I mean, right now, I mean, they're just numbers. Our town spends $18,000 a head for children. When you break down the school, just the school budget, that's what it comes down to. So that tax revenue, if you use those numbers on this today, that'll cover 19 students, okay? So if you get more than 19 students, whether it is or no, I don't care one way or the other, but the realization is the burden will go to the existing taxpayers. And I mean, that's how I understand that's how it works. If you don't have children, your money is still paying for schools. If you're not using a senior center yet, your tax money, that all goes into a big pool. But I worry about so many people that I talked to when I decided to run for this position talked about they're getting priced out. And these aren't people that are going to qualify for this housing. You know, and the stipulations that are for the affordable housing, you have to be a first-time home buyer, unless you've been, you know, outsourced from a home, you've divorced, and I mean, I'm sure we've all done the homework and seen what the qualifications are, okay? But what happens to our existing tax people who have already are invested into this community? Some of them have lived here their whole lives, and if we keep taxing them or keep the burden on them, you know, how do we answer to them? Like, my concern is now is that's my number one priority. I wish I could magic wand and we'd have all kinds of affordable housing. We would be able to solve all the problems. But for me, my first responsibility is to who already lives in town and pays taxes.
Can I ask you a question? Just because it's just a question that, you know, I've thought the same thing about taxes too, but, you know, I have no idea if that figure you just stated is true, $18,000 per student.
It's on state, you can
Okay.
look it up.
So how many houses in town are covering that? Never mind having multiple kids. I mean, like, I get it. I totally get it. But on the flip side, it's like, well, with anything new, the argument against it remains. And, you know, part of the budget is growth. And there are no other developments, you know, besides Sousa and stuff wrapping up. How do we cover that growth, you know, going forward? These are like, you know, things I want to talk through because there are questions going through my head.
Well, see, for me, it's the density of the growth. Like we're putting, in this 6 acres, we're putting 52 units. So I think somebody said, what happens when, you know, Mark, I think you might have said, what happens if they come behind Dairy Queen or any piece of land that might become available? So what happens then, like, I guess maybe I would be more comfortable if we went to town meeting and said, you vote on this. You tell us if you want us to go against what zoning is now. You tell us, because we've hit our 40B, and I don't know if that's a good thing or not a good thing. I mean, you know, and for me, it's not in my backyard at all. It's what it does to our town. And I think it might have been in maybe Kathy Vanderboom's letter that said, the reason why our kids want to stay in this town or love this town is because how this town is. And we're starting to change it. So, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with change, but the people love this town for what it is, and that it's a smaller town. And that's why, I mean, from what I've been told is that's why the zoning went to what it was, because we didn't want the town to grow too fast. Towns like Mansfield, Franklin grew quickly, and that hurt them, you know, and the taxes went up, and now you have to build more schools or more services or whatever. So, I mean, that's where, for me, it's not that Mr. Say wants to build something there. I can't wrap my head around this type of density. I can't wrap my head around what would possibly do to services. And then it could be other places. And there was another comment, Bill Caspera, if it wasn't you, I apologize, but for some reason I think it was you, that made a comment saying that this is a good thing for us because if we have more inventory, it'll make other homes affordable in town. So what are we going to do? We're going to add more homes, and then other people's property values come down, you know, to bring in another project? I don't know if that's the right answer, but I'm just trying to express what my concerns are. And I also kind of feel like if this project could go forward without us, I would rather see that. You know what I mean? Like, if we're not holding it up, and you know, like what we've heard, that he can still go forward, he can go to the state, he can go to, you know, then go to zoning, who has the expertise. Why not, you know, if our decision to, and I don't like the word partner, I don't like the word us backing it, if this can go through without our approval, I really don't see why we're involved, to be honest with you. You know, because if we're not in, I also had one other question, I'm sorry, I thought about it afterwards. I don't know if Paige is still on. Like, if this project gets blessed by the Selectmen and then it's approved by the state, does that make this property a by right development?
Just coming on, just give her a minute.
No.
Okay.
It still has to go to the zoning board,
Okay.
no matter what.
I think Seth had
I just
something.
had a point around the budget and specifically the school budget. So Stephanie, your number of 18,000, I believe, was the school budget divided by the number of students per year, right? So that's a perfectly valid number if that's what it is, and I trust that that's the right number. There's a concept that George Sami, our finance director, could speak to, which I think might alleviate some of the concerns there, is that there's the financial concept of incremental cost, and I won't go into it, but essentially it means that as you add students, the incremental cost of each additional student is much lower than the average cost of that 18,000, because you're adding some books, you're adding some whatever, some food costs or whatever, but you're not adding to the incremental cost of maintaining those buildings. That's a fixed cost. So the incremental cost of each additional student is much lower than the average cost in total, just to make that.
Yeah, and it balances itself, but you got to realize too, I'm not just talking about the building. You add students, you may be adding teachers. So, so I mean, yeah, and actually, I'll be honest with you, that number is actually higher. That's what our cost is. That's after factoring in what the state reimburses the town. So if you have special needs children, I think it's like 60% that they get back, and the state is also reimbursing, different things. So the number, I reached out to Bill Euchner because he knows the numbers. You can look up that number on the state as well.
Yeah, no,
but I just wanted to make
that's
sure
right.
I was looking up, and also the one I was looking up might have been 2019 because in the COVID year would probably throw things off a little bit anyhow. But he told me the number is actually higher. But that's the real
net number? Yeah.
That's the real number is 18,000.
Sure.
One other thing, Steph, you're talking about, people move here because they like the ambiance of our community. But a lot of our kids want to move back here too, and they can't afford it. Mr. Saig is allowing 70% of those houses with Foxboro resident preference. That's the word I was.
Something. Where is that? I didn't see that anywhere in the package. I know he said it here when I had mentioned about it not necessarily taken care of. But where is that in the proposal?
The 40B policy that if you cooperate, you get up 70% priority. You can probably end up with more, but if the people who apply are local, 70% could be set.
And that's just on the initial offer.
Yeah, do you want to just come up to the mic and say that again, just so the people at home?
And I think you had another point if you go ahead.
My name is Bob Engler. I'm the 40B consultant for the applicant. In terms of local preference, DHCD allows a 70% local preference if you support the project, and you have to show that there's a local need, which isn't that difficult. Page could do that. And so that's a set aside for people who have connections to the community. My son runs more affordable housing lotteries than anybody in the state, and he'll tell you that most of the people are local anyway. They're not coming from Brockton, or they're not coming from Fall River. They're coming from here. And so you might end up with 80 or 85%. It just depends on what it is. So that's the local preference. The point I wanted to make, which was to correct a statement that was false earlier by the attorney, you are not the subsidizing agency. DHCD is the subsidizing agency under the LIP program. The state has ruled, the courts have ruled that the technical assistance provided by DHCD is the so-called subsidy. It's not a cash or financial subsidy. So it allows the developer to finance it any way they want. But it's DHCD is the subsidizing agency. You're signing on the application. DHCD still has to approve it. You're in cooperation with them. That's what the LIP process means. The developer, the town, and the state are all working on the application together. But the state says no, there's no LIP program. So yes, it's very important what you're doing, but you're not the subsidizing agency. Don't think that that's what the burden is that you're carrying. It's not. You're a sponsor, but it still has to go to the ZBA. And I've done many LIP projects. I've done 150 40Bs. And I've done many LIPs, and I've done them in my own town of Newton, where I've been for 50 years. And the zoning boards are just as critical for a LIP process that's been signed off that they are for anything else, because they have to follow the law. So your zoning board is prescribed as to what they have to look at, and they hire peer review consultants. The developer pays for them. All the environmental stuff, all that stuff gets covered. You don't have to do that. You're saying, generally speaking, this is something we could use. But then it gets to the zoning board, and they go through all those steps, and it takes 6 months to a year to get through. So that's the process. It's no different than if we went to mass housing. It's the same zoning board process if you sign off or we go to mass housing. It's just you're signing off early, so DHCD gets to look at it and say, okay, we'll do it under the LIP process. It's supposed to be cooperative, and that's what we're looking for. So that's what I can say. As for the school costs and all that, that's a whole other subject I'd love to talk about, but I can't do it tonight. But at any rate. That's what I have to say.
May I add one thing about the schools, even though we're not allowed to speak about it? I will say that I did collect information just for my own edification, and out of 562 40B units in Foxborough, there are 96 students. So that's just a number you can use. Nadia Estates is probably the most similar. And by looking at that, 0K, 3 elementary, 1 middle, and 5 high school. So that's a total of 9 students. And that's Nadia Estates, which is over off Mechanic. And I kind of feel that's the most similar, but just FYI.
Yeah, and that's good to hear that information, Paige, but I will tell you that my street in Summerfield, which is a 2-bedroom home, right now, the overturn, I have 10 kids under 5. So in Summerfield and Cannon Forge is very similar to size, and there's no affordable there. You know, it was never affordable, but size of home, our homes run from 1,400 to 17 plus, almost 1,800, and they're all 2 bedrooms. People use the 3rd room, bonus room as a spare room, and we're loaded in there. And so, I mean, I'm glad to hear those numbers, but I know on the flip side, like I said, the overturn that has just happened in my street alone in the last 5 years has brought us 10 more kids. You know, my kids now are grown, my neighbors' kids are grown. You know, they're in college or have moved on, but the next level coming in is, like I said, that's on one street alone in Summerfield, is 10 kids under 5. So, yeah, and I could be wrong, like I said, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm going on my instinct on what I watched my development do. That's all I can do. Can I tell you 100%? Of course not. You know, just like, no one can say what they were gonna. And I just have to say one thing. I hate to do this, but just because, I got blasted by just saying the word children. I really think we have to stay away from characterizing, where people might come from, using the word Brockton, New Bedford. One other time we used Roxbury. I think we have to stay, I'm getting bombarded because I'm using the word children, and yet we're having people, mention other communities that maybe are having problems, or are lower income, and and saying that we're afraid, people are afraid of 40B because they're going to come from Roxbury is a little bit offensive. I thought to myself, I get bombarded for using the word kids, but at another meeting we use the word Roxbury. At this meeting, we're using Brockton and New Bedford. I
had the same
yeah,
reaction.
I don't think it was meant to be offensive,
I know.
but this is the second time we've zeroed into maybe lower income communities, and for me, it's certainly not worried about where the people are coming from. My concern is the people who live here. So wherever they come from, I just don't want anybody else at home thinking, I don't think that's a concern of anybody on this board. I just wanted to, I hate to bring that up, but it's, this is the second time it's happened, and I just think we should make sure that it's clear that's not where we're headed with whether we support this 40B or not.
You have to just come up, you have to come up. Just remind everyone who you are, please.
Mike Saig, 8 Kendall Drive. I'm the owner of this project. And just to make a point about the schools, if Paige's ratio holds true here, you're talking 9 students. And it's also my understanding that for the last 10 years in the town of Foxborough, the head count keeps going down in the school systems. So I don't really think that's an issue.
I watched a documentary this weekend. It was called like Our Towns or something on HBO, and it was like the untold stories of small towns. And there was a quote in it that was something like, is our past more important than our future? And that kind of hit me. Is like, is our past of how we were and holding the population and not wanting any kind of growth, is that more important than where our town can go? And I know change is scary. I'm probably the least person susceptible to change there is, but that piece just worries me too. So with that, I don't know if anyone has anything else to say. I'll kind of let you guys know where I am. And just to remind you, oh, yep, if you can just keep it brief since we've heard from you.
John Schlebeck, 13 Faxon Street. In support of the project, there's been an assertion made that the normal cycle of life is I move to Foxborough, I raise a family, my children buy a house in Foxborough, I age, and then I downsize. And something has suddenly changed and interrupted that, and we need to act. I'd like to see the data that supports that, because the town has information around census, around, square footage of homes, ages of people. Can we look at, by decade, how many people age in place in Foxborough and then downsize historically? And has that changed? I mean, again, it's an assertion that keeps being pushed, but are we making a data-driven decision on all of this? It seems to be hearsay.
I will say, just since you asked the question, sitting in the...
Excuse me. Fall River was mentioned tonight. I grew up in Fall River. I am insulted.
So, I did sit in some of those housing meetings, and there's at least two examples I can think of. One woman, she's an older woman, she wants to downsize, but there's nothing to kind of go to. She doesn't want to be in an apartment. She wants to have a little garden, or, people want to get rid of their big houses with the, $12,000 tax bill and go into something, but they want, a couple bedrooms, and they want a garage, and they want a yard, but that just doesn't exist.
Did it exist in the...
I don't know. Yeah.
And I think that data is available to either, prove the point or disprove it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it is, but just some of the anecdotal stuff that I personally heard in the housing meetings.
Madam Chair, I don't know if anybody saw the news today, but there was a significant announcement made today when it related to housing. And it said that since 2012, there's been 12.7 housing family units created, and 12.7 million family units created in the U.S., and there's only been 7 million homes developed, which means there's a 5 million housing unit deficit created in the country right now. When that news broke, it sent the stock market down 300 points, because what that says is that there's not enough to sustain the economy on the long term. So this is not only a short-term issue, it's a long-term issue. And one of the things that people talk about, people say, you want examples, I go to the Council on Aging every single month, and I meet with those folks. And the number one issue that they talk about is affordable housing. Because they want to live in this community, they want to stay in this community, they want to be able to sell what they had and gain the value that they've accrued in those homes that they've had in this community, so they can live comfortably in the community and continue to live here. They do love this place. To your point, Stephanie, the kids love this place. They want to be able to afford to live here. And that's the challenge we all face together, whether it's Mike Saig's project or anyone else's project. The biggest challenge we face right now is there a deficit in housing, and that's a nationwide issue. That's why you keep seeing housing prices continue to rise.
Yeah.
That's the issue. And so that's why this is just one small sampling of what's going on in the world, but we're part of it. Everyone's part of it. And
Well,
that's
with that
the
being said, Bill,
challenge.
like Leah just said, so I think I hear that too from people saying, oh my God, I want to, but the problem is, I think in Foxborough, not everybody who has lived here forever is in a $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 home. So the seniors I know, they want to, if they sell their home to downsize, they're not going into an almost $600,000 home. You know what I mean? They're not going to qualify for affordable, okay, first of all. So unless
They will if they sell their house. That's the issue.
Based on income,
If they
not-
sell their house, they will have the money.
You have to be a first-time home buyer as well.
Well, not for a project like his.
That's what, I looked up the 40B, the criteria said, the only exemptions were if you, I think it was something about if you had, you were, like I said, displaced or,
Yeah.
but I don't see those people, like the longtime Foxborough families, we all know them around town. So, but most of them don't live in, you know, it's the middle-aged, younger generation that are in the $1 million homes in the bigger developments in town, who are now working jobs that, you know, pay great salaries. But most of the older people, a lot of them in their original homes that they raised their family, and, you know, those are the small capes, whatever. Yeah, they're gonna get, you know, maybe they pay $20,000 for the house and they're gonna sell it for $450 or $500. But I don't think their goal then is to spend $600 on a home. I think the goal for them is to be able to sell a home and maybe have a small little something, little nest egg to continue to, you know, to maintain the new home and everything else. So I don't know if the whole downsizing, you know, I mean, if it's a medical issue and someone just needs a, you know, a first floor, but I don't know if financially these houses help people wanting to downsize. And I understand this is what the market is. I'm not saying that Mrs. A is charging a lot of money. That's what the market is. Houses in my development, they're 27 years old, and they're going for over $600,000, 2-bedroom homes.
Because there's no
probably
housing.
by the time
That's the issue.
yeah, but probably by the time this comes to fruition, if it does, Mr. Say probably won't be charging $585. I mean, I know that's I'm saying that in a good way. It's a market number.
You know what the other issue though is too, Stephanie? These people don't want to have to continue to worry about snow plowing and lawn cutting and all the things that go with it. If they go into a project like this, they have to do anything.
Yeah. And you know something too, I know this is jumping way too far ahead, but I live in a place where there's a homeowners association. Now for us, Cannon Forge is a different animal. They're a true condo. They're paying $500-600 a month. But that's the thing too, when you're getting into affordable, I mean, you're talking, these buildings are attached. So I'm assuming it'll be the type of homeowners that's gonna take care of roofs and stuff like that because they're attached. You don't have your own home. So you're also talking about, these people could be having $400 HOA fees. You know, I mean, that's jumping ahead, but what I'm saying is there's gonna be a lot more to somebody who wants to be in here because they can't afford. You're gonna have your mortgage and whatever, and, you know, I can only say that from living in a property that has an HOA fee. You know, if someone's lived in a condo, they'll understand that. So there's gonna be more of an expense to that too. You know, like I said, that's everybody's own, they'll know what they can afford if they apply for this, but the density's hard for me.
And I agree, and I think we could go on, and, you know, whether I vote to support the project, you know, I don't want the neighbors to think, you know, that we haven't heard them, or even people that aren't neighbors like Mr. Powers, or, you know, if we vote against it, Mr. Saig, you know, I don't know which way it'll crumble, but I want you to know how serious the board takes this. And this is unfortunately, you know, one of these tough decisions that divides a group, and you know, you kind of let down one side or the other, and that us as a board, you know, take seriously, and it's the tough decisions that keep us up at night, you know, because there are pros and cons on both sides. So, you know, with that, I don't want to keep dragging this on because I think we could sit here every other week and go on and on for hours and talk about stuff. I think we've had a good discussion tonight. You know, we could take a vote tonight. It's posted. The only piece that makes me a little bit uncomfortable is the proposed conditions. I know we've talked a lot about proposed conditions, whether it's, you know, we're not supporting the number of units, or, you know, there's a sidewalk, or I've heard from many neighbors they want to be able to tie into the sewer. You know, maybe that could, you know, at their own cost, just allowing them to tie in. From what I understand, they weren't allowed before. You know, there's a lot of stuff that has been thrown out conditions-wise that I don't feel like we have a good solid list of what conditions are for me if we voted tonight and I supported this, to kind of know where those are going. So,
So would that be a list that we came up with that was, I think Paige might have said before, suggestions?
yeah, I know we've talked about a lot of stuff, but we don't have like a solid list of conditions that if we vote tonight and I, you know, decided to get behind this, I don't have a good list of conditions to know, you know, in this motion, what the proposed conditions are that this board is considering.
So Madam Chair, I did, based upon what's been discussed at these hearings so far, I did try to gather a list of items that were talked about, and I sent out to the board yesterday, I believe it was, just to see if, I know you may not have seen it because I know you
No, I've seen it, we haven't talked about that list of conditions.
Right, fair enough. So, but I do think if in fact that's a good starting point, I think if there are other things, maybe that's the thing where the board could actually provide additional input to me, or to Paige for that matter, to see if in fact that list is the most comprehensive list that we have, or if you want to add to it, you certainly can do that. But you would have to do that by sending that stuff to me directly, not to any one of you directly.
I was just gonna, so that list felt to me more like concerns than it did conditions.
Okay.
In that it was concern about the road leading into the property not being wide enough, or concern about sidewalks. I guess those could become conditions, right? But I mean, a lot of that stuff is probably part of the project.
Well, the
anyway.
conditions would not necessarily be set by the board. They could be recommendations
Right.
for consideration by the zoning board of appeal.
Right.
So that's why I coined it, I phrased it that way. These are things that are of concern to the board.
Yeah.
That should be evaluated by the ZBA as they do their detailed review.
Some of them just maybe felt like they were outside the scope of the project, like building a sidewalk along Moore Street feels that it's outside the scope of what this is about.
And I'm just looking to get that list. I know I read it earlier, but.
There was also a list put out by all the department heads.
Yes.
Right.
There's a good list there.
And those also felt like concerns though, Mr. Sag, right, as opposed to restrictions when it.
Which would be addressed by the ZBA in the state.
Right.
Yeah, so when I think about restrictions, it's,
Conditions.
Conditions, it was more along the lines of, instead of 25%, 35% affordable. Instead of an income level of, 60 to 90, it's 70 to 100, those types of things. Or 75% local versus 90% local, or 50 or not, so those are the types of conditions that I think would be considered.
Are those conditions you talk about, are they set by the state? Are those conditions you talk about, like 25% being changed? Is that set by the state?
You have to be at the microphone for people to hear you, but let me read some of, just in case the people on the board haven't heard them. This is our preliminary list collected. The size of and I'm gonna not read them word for word, but the size of the project seems excessive based on the size of the lot. The water lines to the site should be evaluated by the Water and Sewer Commission. A sidewalk within the development and outside the development has been brought up. Sewer line to the site should be examined to determine if there's adequate capacity. Because I would hate for this to come into this group and then, someone who lives, I'm pulling a random address at 101 Morse, not be able to tie into the sewer if they wanted to. And I don't know, if the pipe runs down that far or not, but, it's just something for the people on Moore Street. I feel like, they should be able to tie in at their own expense if they want to, just like anyone else. The bridge leading to the site, obviously there's concerns there. And then, stormwater guidelines. So those are just some of them, that we have so far.
Which will all be addressed in the process.
Right, which will all be addressed in the
Right.
process. Yeah, just keep it really brief since we've heard from you guys. I do want to, try to wrap it up. Like I said, we could go on and on all night.
Again, one of the biggest concerns, guys, is you have a toxic waste dump right next to this property. One other point of correction from Mr. Buckley, he stated that, this land has been, secured. There's a fence between the industrial side and this residence. The owner of this land, prior to Mr. Kelly and Mr. Saig, was the Bannon estate. Bannon owned the bleachery. There was no delineation of fence and property at that time. It was one giant industrial site. So to think that soil, that water in front of this parcel, on that parcel, isn't contaminated, it's crazy.
And I think we definitely hear those
Thank you.
pieces,
That's
and that will absolutely be addressed. So that's a good example of a condition that's not on our list now. I don't think that we need to review the 21E, but we need to make sure that the site is safe to be built on, which will happen through the normal process anyway.
So I just want to clarify, so at this stage of the game, so to speak, in terms of the review process, it's more expressing the concerns that you've identified as part of your process that would be then eventually turned into conditions, which would be part of the final decision issued by the ZBA.
So that's where I just want to be, if we do a vote, I want to make sure, really, I want to protect ourselves that, you know, like other people have said, that it's not going to be, well, the selectmen signed off on it, therefore we're endorsing 52 units, or we're endorsing the bridge, you know. I think that's not what anyone's saying. Yep.
Oh, you're gonna come up, like,
Yeah, you
sorry,
gotta come up,
no one can
sorry.
hear you.
I think your charge is to vote on whether you think the town needs affordable housing. You're the board of directors of this town, from the 30,000-foot vantage point. The other stuff at the floor level all goes through these other processes, and there isn't anything that we've talked about that isn't going to be addressed, both by the state and the ZBA.
Right, we understand that. We just want to make it clear that if, you know, me personally, if I vote for this, I am not endorsing, you know, the number of units. I am not endorsing, you know, if the sewer lines are capacity, I'm not, like, we're looking at is the site right. I'm not endorsing, is it, you know, safe from contaminants? I'm not endorsing that stuff. And that's just protecting ourselves and making sure that we're all comfortable with that, which everyone's told us, you know, the same thing over and over.
So I just want to call out that it feels like some of us have laid our cards on the table. Some of us have sort of yet to. So I think a vote tonight would be, if we vote tonight, it would be because we have already decided, basically. And so prolonging it might be just making the process, dragging the process out just for the sake of the process, when we already kind of have an understanding of where the vote's gonna fall.
And I gotta speak for me, like, literally today, I've been like, all right, yeah, it is good, and then like I've literally looked at other things and been like, I don't know. So like that, at least that's where I am.
Okay, fair.
So, you know, just like when I started my opening thing, if I said, it seems like I'm all over the place, because I am, you know, I am awake at night thinking about this and thinking of all the pros and cons. And I haven't made up my mind. And, you know, as we sit here and walk into this room today, I did not know how I'm gonna vote. And that's really why I wanted to hear. I really value listening to my peers and hearing their ideas. You know, I can have my own ideas and do my own research, but, you know, I value, you know, what Steph, you know, brings to the table or talks about, you know, certain things, and what you do about budget, or, you know, I take all that into account too.
There. I don't want to put Ed on the spot. Do you have thoughts you want to share about?
No, I'm listening to the discussion and points that have been brought out by members of this board, you know, in terms of evaluating the vote that I'm going to take with regard to this process. Because I think it's important as we go forward with additional housing projects that come in front of this board to know what we're getting into. And I think it's been clear from the presentations made by people in the audience, both pro and con, that give us, you know, some ideas of how we as a community should act out on it. So I think I've made up my mind on what I'm gonna do.
Maybe I'm the only one that's still bouncing around.
No, I'm comfortable having a vote tonight.
Okay, all right, you comfortable having a vote?
Yes.
All right.
I'm not.
Excuse me?
I think,
One more point of order.
Let's, again, just keep, we can't, every time we talk though, we
I
can't.
was afraid it was going to get to this point.
Well, just Leah, make sure that he wants to make a point, but make sure that this is your meeting.
Yeah, we're still in control of the meeting. We don't have to, every time we say something, have everyone
I
else.
did just hear that this is going to go to vote right now.
Well,
Is
it
that
might.
correct, or?
It might.
Yeah.
Okay. You got to stop this right now.
It's not-
I have a legal
not
issue
true.
against this property, that you are going to have to redraw your property lines, your surveying lines. I'm taking a piece of this land by adverse possession. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so I think with that, it sounds like we can still, you know, work through some of the conditions after. We're all comfortable with that, depending on where we go.
I would like to do the opposite. I would like to talk about the conditions before we would vote. I know the conditions aren't gonna be met one way or the other, but I just feel like if we sit and put a list of conditions, listen, you know me, I'll never lie. I don't like this project. Not because of Mr. Saig, not because of, it's nothing personal. And if the project were to go through without our approval, I would have no problem with that. Because that wouldn't be my say, that wouldn't be on my conscience, my concerns. But I think at least before we vote, if we're gonna put a list together, I feel like we should put the list together first.
Yeah, and my thing is I don't know that there's gonna be other steps in the process, so I don't know that should hold up our vote tonight, because either this is gonna go forward or it's not. And I think everything that we've addressed, has come from the staff report, whether it's, Chris's comments on the water pipe or the sewer pipe being addressed. I think I feel comfortable that we've talked about enough conditions. I don't think that anyone, whether for or against the project, is endorsing any kind of, number of units or density. I think that's been heard loud and clear. So I think I'm okay. Again, this is the third meeting. We've been talking about this for a month and a half. I think at this point, we got to get a feel from the board to either, fish or cut bait on behalf of the applicant, just to get, this is step one of a lot of steps that are to come. So I'm okay with a vote tonight. And it sounds like, Steph, I hear what you're saying too.
Yeah, I would have liked to have done that, but with that being said, I'm gonna be honest with you. I wish this was, my goal would have been that we didn't take a vote at all. That we just let the project go through the steps.
Well, then that's voting no, Steph.
Whatever.
That's voting no, is not to
Well,
support.
no, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm not supportive with it, but I was hoping maybe that if we started to really sit down to what the concerns were and talk specific, well, I guess maybe we did talk about concerns.
We did.
but-
I'd like to see us move
Yeah.
the question.
I think, like I said, I really enjoy all this conversation, and I think we could go on and on, but I think we've heard enough for a majority of the board, and, me included, to, at this point, probably move forward with the vote.
All right, so.
Okay, so the motion, I will read the motion as so there's the option to support or not to support?
Yep.
Should I read just one of to read the motion as to support and exclude the not
Yes.
to? Because that's redundant.
Yes.
That's- Okay. Motion for the Board of Selectmen to support the 119 Moore Street Local Initiative Program application with the proposed conditions to be met by the 119 Moore Street Realty Trust and Foxstar Corporation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. All right, so I think this is the end of step one. Honestly, due to open meeting laws, none of us have spoken, but I know that it didn't fall the way you wanted it to, but it brings me a little bit of comfort, that I think the rest of the board was on the same page, so.
All right. Could I ask one favor, though? I would love for whatever is sent forward, whether it's our blessing to the state, I would like to publicly say, I would like it to that I did not support it, okay? So I don't want this to, I want them to know that one of the selectmen did not support this at all. So if we could do that, I would appreciate that.
I'll say one thing on the process, which is, the vote means the head select person gets to sign the application. You can write whatever letter you want and have pages and pages of notes. DHCD will come and do a site walk. They will ask for concerns that everybody can raise.
Can you sit?
Part of the application.
You're muting
Oh, you're muting it. You're muting it with your finger.
Muting
it.
There you go.
So, I mean,
Nobody wants to listen to me anyway, okay.
to summarize, we operate as a
You heard
board
what I had
on a
to say.
majority.
It's an application signature, and then all kinds of things get signed. DHC will ask questions, and you get to comment and say, we have these concerns. They get passed on to the zoning board, gets to see all the concerns. And the neighbors get to appeal, by the way. There's a whole litigious process. If they've been harmed, or they think they've been harmed by the vote of the zoning board, they have a whole appeal process. So it's a long, long process.
Yeah.
Well, can I say one other thing, just while Mr. Saig is still sitting here? Just so you know, this has nothing to do with you. This isn't personal. And you know what, I do, even though my fellow board members voted differently, I look forward to being part of the process with asking, with some suggestions and stuff, absolutely.
Thank you for your vote. But
If you can just
secondly,
come-
more
come-
importantly, thank
Mike,
you
Mike,
for
come
all-
up front.
Mike,
No one can hear you.
We got
gotta use
Mr.
the mic,
Becula.
sorry.
Just don't hit the mute button.
Mike, use the mic.
I'll go over here.
Okay.
Thank you for your vote, but more importantly, thank you for all of you for serving the town.
I appreciate it.
Thank
This is a
you.
great town. We brought our families up here, and I'm trying to make it even better.
And you know something, that's the only reason why I wanted you, I didn't want you to feel like, for some you know, like, I have no reason not to support it for a personal reason. I have to vote, you know, and what you'll find out is, I don't mind being on the island by myself, like, I have to vote how I want.
Yeah, right, that's what we're here
That's
for.
what you
got
should
it.
do. and
Yeah.
I don't-
But I look
don't
forward to
take
the
it
I
personally.
do look forward to the process, though.
And on the flip side, just like you just, addressed Mr. Saig, same thing I think to us, to everyone who is on the other side of the project, we hear you, we definitely hear your concerns, and that's why there's, more steps to the process and it doesn't end
Somebody
here.
said to me once that
We intend to
democracy is,
address every single one of them.
yeah. Somebody once said to me, democracy is messy, but it's the best thing we got.
Yeah.
Right? So
It's not an
that's how we
easy
just
job.
have to deal with it.
All right, so with that, let's move over to the town manager's update. I know you had a personnel board meeting earlier today, tell us about it.
Tell us about it.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
If you guys can just shut the door, because I see there's a lot of people in the hall when you go out as well.
Waiting for us?
So thank you. So thank you.
One lone bystander.
They're getting the
Just prior to the-
torches.
So, yes, just prior to this Selectmen's meeting, the Personnel Board did meet in here, and we discussed, and the board voted on two policies to endorse, to send them forward to the Selectmen. So we'll go ahead and do that with their suggestions, and we'll bring them back to the next board meeting. Those two policies were the town's electronic communication and computer use policy. So it's updating an old policy, bringing it up to date with some of the new technology and procedures that are out there and available. So just an update, and I'm going to incorporate the Personnel Board's suggestions into that, which there are a couple of minor ones. And the second policy is one we've discussed. It's the Performance Evaluation and Review Policy. And what this is an umbrella policy to capture all of the evaluations and evaluation tools that are already in existence for our union and non-union personnel. And it provides guidance and overview for our managers, as well as the people that are being evaluating, and kind of a jumping off platform to move into training of our staff for the performance. Not to say that we don't have training already, but we need to expand on that and do it on a more regular basis. So on both of those policies, the planning board did vote unanimously to endorse them, to bring them in front of the selectmen for a vote. So I'll prepare them to bring them to your next meeting if there's time on the agenda.
Thank you. And while we were talking earlier today, I know one of my favorite topics, appointments and committees. I know when I came on to the Board of Selectmen, I had to do darkness to light training, although I think I had done it as part of, another volunteer program. I know we've got our policies, but is that something that's kind of slipped as well that we need to maybe tighten up?
In terms of boards and committees or
Yeah,
personnel?
boards and committees. I know personnel, we have a great handle on it, but I'm, looking back 4 years ago, and Mark, maybe, I don't know if you remember doing it, I remember watching a pre-recorded darkness to light training, at least when I came on as a board committee, and just with the cleanup that we've done, we should make sure that that is sent out too, just like personnel for our boards and committees.
Sure.
Unless they, a lot of people have done it through other things and they can show
Right.
the certificate, but I do think that it's really important in having Mr. Cree and Mr. Dudley in here today and talking about the appointment process. Just reminded me.
It sounds like they're coming up with a new one, too.
I've never taken it.
Yeah, so Steph's never taken it, we
Yeah,
probably.
I don't know
probably
why,
do
I
need to
just
clean that up.
wasn't, like, in as many boards of different things I've been on, I don't know if it was just, they weren't doing it as I came in, or maybe people assumed I had.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I'd be very interested in,
But it sounds like they are working on possibly a new one as well, so.
Preferred in person too, everyone will tell you that, but at least if we check the box on
Yeah.
recorded too, so.
might keep me in the back of your mind when they're gonna have one.
Okay, when we do it, I'm sure that Christina will put it out not just to employees, but also, like the last thing she put out for the chair training, she'll put that out through that avenue to get it out to the boards and committees and commission members.
And you can do it recorded now if you want to, from the convenience and comfort of your own home.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
And that's all I have.
All right, talk to us about trash.
Trash talking, right? So,
Trash talk.
just briefly on that piece, we actually did meet with the local rep who represents WIN now, which is Wheelabrator Industries, is now actually our trash company. That's the preferred trash company in town. And we had a good meeting with him, so he was able to meet all of our staff, where a lot of the calls do come to, including Chris Gallagher was at the meeting as well. If we do get calls, they come to our office more often than not. So we wanted to make sure that staff made a connection with Brandon, who was who was actually a Foxborough resident and grew up here in this town, so he's very familiar with the community. So he has a very personal connection to making sure that the service is done well. And so we're going to continue to work with him directly. But I also, on the next level, have received requests from a couple individuals to serve on a subcommittee, as a working group, to work on that issue of trash options and how we can look at that. And so I'm going to start, probably within the next week, I'm going to call for a meeting of that group.
Do we have more than one? Because last I heard there was one person.
Chris Gallagher's offered to serve.
Okay.
So that's Larry Uwe has offered to serve.
He didn't really have a choice, right?
No.
Yeah, no, I called him.
But he did call.
We missed our meeting, Larry.
He did call, so I will say.
Prompted by me.
Good man.
And a text by me.
Okay.
So there you go. But anyway, so if there are others that want to participate, I welcome the opportunity to have them and to get their perspective. And it was helpful to me to at least get an understanding of what's going on in the industry right now. And the lady from DEP who I met with was actually very helpful with that. So I think there aren't a lot of options. I'm being entirely upfront about that, but certainly it's something we should at least explore.
It's worth evaluating.
It's worth evaluating. Excuse me. On the American Rescue Plan, the town has secured a contract with Clifton Lawson, who will be advising the town on how to properly spend the funding for the town's direct portion of the ARPA funding. They also, by the way, are the same consultant that's going to be working with Norfolk County. So at least we'll be able to get some consistent understanding of how we can spend the money. The county ARPA funding will be available to us through a portal that they've established, and that should be available by the end of the month. And once I receive that latest information, I'll be giving you an update. I received the update on the portal status as of yesterday, and they indicated to me that it should be ready by the end of the month. Okay, and then let me see.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
That's okay.
If I could, through the chair?
Of course.
So in other words, Bill, it's going to cost us money to get us money.
Yeah, a little. It's not going to be a lot, though. Yeah,
No?
because
It wasn't part of the cover if I
yeah, that money will be
remember?
covered by the
Yeah.
grant itself. So we don't have
Will
to.
it eat into it, though?
Yeah, we won't. It won't cost. It'll lead into a little, but not significant.
No, okay.
Because we're not going to use them that often. Because
Okay.
it's a relatively small amount.
Okay.
So, but they are available to us in case. So we don't want to make sure we spend it correctly, so it doesn't get kicked back to us. Also, just a concerning piece of information I received today from the state was that there were 2 cases of West Nile, and 2 cases of West Nile discovered here in Massachusetts recently. So I think that's the 3rd overall now that we've seen in Massachusetts this year. So,
Yeah, the flu.
so that is obviously concerning. So we're starting to see more and more instruction from the state as to how to deal with that. I know Matt Brennan's on top of that situation, but it's a little
Mosquitoes,
concerning.
Bill?
Mosquito-borne West Nile, yeah. So residents are urged to continue to take precautions to avoid mosquito bites at this time
Are
of the
they?
year.
Is the county spraying? I feel like that always comes up.
They-
Everyone
they
else
have-
is in the air.
They
have you
have
heard from them?
they have sprayed at the beginning of the year. I haven't seen them spraying recently, but
Okay.
they did spray at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, that season's pretty much over, right?
Right.
Yeah, I just don't remember what time.
Yeah, they did spray. I think it was in May, if I'm not mistaken. And then locally, we have 56 cases of COVID. Right now, we're running about 3% overall, so in terms of infection rate. We're still in the yellow right now, but hopefully that will, from what I'm hearing on the national and state level, things are starting to turn the other way in a more positive direction. So let's keep a close eye on that.
I wouldn't mind having Mr. Kenvin come in again. He hasn't been in a while. Not, even if it's just remote, just for a brief little update.
Yeah, Tom and probably Matt. Matt's very, very good
Yeah.
in this area. So
Yeah.
maybe to have both of them in
Yeah.
just to give an update would be a good thing. And I'm sure they'd be happy to do it. Even if it was remotely, they could do it, yeah.
And a quick question on that. Is that the Delta, do we know if that's the Delta variant?
Mostly it's the Delta variant, yes, from what I'm hearing. It's, and there's been just a few breakthrough cases, from the previous variant, but most of them are the Delta variants and the people that haven't been vaccinated. That
This might
seems
be
to
a
be the
stupid
case.
question, but I really don't know. When you get tested now, can they tell you which one it is? Like, can they tell you it's the Delta
I don't know the
variant,
answer to
or-
that. That's an interesting question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Good question for
But
Tom.
yeah, that's a good question for him. I think if you're vaccinated, it seems to be more Delta, but that is by no means my medical expert. But
Right.
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
question.
You
I
know,
think,
It's a fair question. You
even if
can
they
ask.
just come in,
It's a
nothing
good
long,
idea.
10, 15 minutes at the beginning,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christina, could you just put that on
Yeah,
a
that's
list?
a good
I think
idea.
I think I heard this afternoon, I think the state number might have been like just down slightly, hospitalizations, Bill? Did you say? I think I heard on the news. I think.
The cases are coming down the other way, which is a
Yeah.
good sign, so
Slightly,
we're.
but-
Slightly, yeah,
but
but
down.
it looks like the peak has been reached, and so we're going the other way now, which is a good thing. And they said that's pretty much consistent with what they've been saying.
And
It
if
was
they
the-
come in to do an update too, I wouldn't mind hearing a little bit about the stadium, like have there been any,
Yeah, any cases.
patterns tied to that, just, anything, just some high levels.
Also today, I know that, I believe that Mr. Keegan had talked about it before, about the health department launching a new COVID dashboard, and that went live today.
Oh,
So
awesome.
it's right on the front page, it's also linked on the health page, but if you click on that, you can get, I believe, 14 different infographics and details on different, the vaccination rate, the COVID cases currently, and other numbers like that.
Can
on
we send
COVID
that out?
info.
Because I didn't know.
Yeah, it literally
we-
went live this
Okay.
afternoon.
Yeah, so I'll post that tomorrow.
And
is
the
that,
school has a dashboard too.
and is that actually on the town's website, or is it on the
It's
Board
on
of
the
Health?
town's front page, there's a button that says,
great.
COVID dashboard, and it has all the
Right.
information. It's also
Very good.
on the health department's page itself.
I know you were looking at that like at 5 o'clock tonight.
Yes.
So literally, so we didn't have a chance to even talk about it, but anyway, so I did want to note that we did get a proclamation from the governor, signed by the governor and lieutenant governor and the secretary of the Commonwealth relative to 9/11, the 20th anniversary of 9/11. It was issued to all the cities and towns, but it's actually a pretty nice document to have for keepsake value, because this is obviously a very important issue for Foxborough, and as was shown by the showing of folks that could be there at the event on Saturday, we had quite a nice showing of folks for the ceremony, which is Foxborough always does a great job of remembering, especially where one of our own, Mr. McGinty and the McGinty family were obviously impacted by that. Just as an aside, and first of all, thank you to both fire and police for doing such a great job there as well. But just an aside, CNN actually did a segment on, which actually included Foxborough, and its segment on Saturday night, which went off about 8 o'clock, and it was, Chris Mitchell was involved in that, he was interviewed along with Mrs. McGinty, and they had a nice tribute, and great mention of the people that were impacted by the events on 2001. So it was great to see that, and nice to see that Foxborough gained national recognition for the things that we do here. But also, unfortunately, we obviously didn't want the day to happen. But we will never forget, and that's really important that we don't ever do that. So I
Does
appreciate
anybody
that.
else feel like everything I watched last week, it's just, I don't know, people were sharing stories
Right.
that they weren't able to share
Exactly. Yeah.
before this. A girl I graduated high school with, she was in the Pentagon.
Yeah.
She was on the other side that didn't get hit, but of course, still the trauma of being there that day and everything. And she started, this is the first time she was sharing things on Facebook with people, some stories. She still has the clothes she was wearing that day hanging
Yeah.
in her basement for
Sure.
20 years.
Yeah.
But it was like she said, I just wasn't able to truly, and she also said it took her like 5 months before she could cry. She said
Yeah.
when she went
She
back
was still
into
in
the
shock,
Pentagon,
probably,
it was
but
just,
yeah,
and it's just like, it was almost like real, without the actual day and the tragedy happening, I felt like we were like almost reliving it a little bit, and just,
Well, the thing that's most shocking to me was it was
Sad
20
day.
years ago.
20 years, right?
That just continues to blow my mind. It was 20 years ago that we saw, everybody here probably remembers exactly where they were, unless you're not 20 years old, but obviously, but yeah, what is.
Or two.
Yeah, but what's, so, but in all honesty though, it was great to see that the next generation of kids are all, some are working as firefighters, some are working in the same buildings, or obviously not the same buildings, but the same industries that their parents were working when they were killed.
It was really, Mike
was
Keller
really moving.
actually shared a picture of him at Ground
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah.
And him and I graduated together, and
Yeah.
that really hit me, like, we were babies. We weren't even
Yeah.
out of like college yet,
Yeah.
and there he is, in his uniform at Ground Zero, and that was something I had never known, that, just that personal connection that really, hit me that day to see that.
So it was great. It was great that all the channels did a great job of recapturing it and doing new interviews. I saw a special on Apple TV that was terrific, where they interviewed the President Bush, and several people from the cabinet who were involved in what they were doing and how they were going from state to state in Air Force One because they weren't sure they could go back to D.C. And it was just a really unbelievable, recreation of what had actually happened. It was quite inspiring.
Why don't you
So-
tell us about some more happy events? that
Yeah,
are
some
going
more
on
happy
coming
things.
up
So-
in town?
so,
So just to
just-
remind everyone, Bill's approving some applications that aren't coming in front of us. So I just asked him to let us know what he approved for the period before.
One
Yeah.
happy one after you're done.
Sure, and I just, a couple, let me talk about the events I did approve. That was the events in town property, the Foxborough Boys Soccer Booster Car Wash on September 19th at Town Hall. The Lions Club Fair on the Commons, October 2nd at Foxborough High School. On the Common, October 2nd, Foxborough High School Car Wash at Town Hall, October 3rd. And Foxborough JC's annual September 11th Memorial on the Common. So those are the events that I've approved so far. And then, just so we all know that we had the first Pats game this past weekend, which seemed to go pretty well. Well, however, we did run into, there was a bit of a snafu with the way that tickets were processed, and it did back things up at the stadium, so people had difficulty getting into the stadium. I did talk with Mike Grace and Mike Kelleher about that on following yesterday's briefing about how things went, and that was the one thing that I did actually send an email to the Kraft Group indicating that's something that they need to address, and they were already doing that, so I fully expect that they will. But just as something that we noticed could have impacted public safety in a negative way if it was continuing to if things weren't getting processed quick enough.
In
'Cause
COVID, just COVID-wise, I
yeah,
saw
COVID-wise,
pictures.
yeah, COVID-wise, as well as the fact that people were getting very unruly, or there was a lot of unrest about the fact they couldn't get into the stadium, and the game had already started. So that was something that needed to get addressed. It was not something that isn't news because it was on talk radio all day yesterday and in the newspapers, et cetera. So, but it's something we did address with them, and I fully expect that they'll address it for the next game.
It always makes me nervous because I'm so old school. Like, I'd rather have just a paper ticket. But I must have, as I was approaching the gate, over and over again, I kept pulling up my ticket to make sure the barcode was there. And you know something? Sometimes because there's so many people, the Wi-Fi isn't great up there.
Right.
And so, and I will say once, like 3 years ago, Ryan and I were going in, and same thing. My actual paper tickets, season ticket holder tickets, her barcode wouldn't scan.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it happens, I mean.
Yeah, it was new technology. They were doing with the touchless system, which is all, good stuff and things that we should be pursuing and that they should be pursuing, and which they are doing.
But I wouldn't mind
But
seeing that debrief, like if that happens,
Yeah.
or Stadium Advisory,
Yeah.
Issued something, I wouldn't mind.
I haven't got anything from Stadium
Okay.
Advisory, but I was a debrief. I talked to both chiefs the next day after each event to see how it works, how things worked, and what, if they had. But they had very few arrests. It was not a lot of problems, but at that one time, it was getting, a little bit unruly because people were getting very anxious about getting in.
I think Mike has something too.
So, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, you had asked for some a happy update. So, and you were talking about history. So, one of the things on our town, special town meeting agenda is going to be, or the warrant is going to be naming of new streets, and one of those streets is after our town historian. And so I just want to let the board know that 2 days before your next meeting, our town historian, Jack Arthurlet, turns 90 years old. So if you run into Jack, between now and then, make sure you wish him a happy 90th birthday.
Yeah, and that class reunion, it was nice to look at that picture.
Oh, that was a
of
great
everyone.
picture.
Yeah, so.
And we do have a new staff member. Do you want to just?
Sure. I had announced her at your last meeting because we had hired her, but today was her second day. So Kate Levesque is off to a very good and busy start in the Human Resources office, here in Town Hall. She's working Monday through Thursday, regular hours starting, 9:30 to 4 p.m. So she'll have regular access, from our employees. Not full-time as I hope we'll get to sometime in the future, but anyway, she's off to a great start. We're sending to a couple of training things just to show her how we do things, here in Foxborough with our systems, and so I'm happy that she's arrived.
All right, great. Yeah.
I have two things, if I could. One, it's late tonight, but could you put a little synopsis on this Registry of Deeds
Oh,
letter?
I asked for it. He and I talked about it.
Maybe in 2 weeks, tell us what the whole politics behind this is, and.
I have something I can forward to you, too.
Okay, great. And the only other thing I have is, I don't know if Chris is still on the line. I had a couple of people call me about DPW workers being at the end of Meadowview and Beach Street during the game, and also Pine Acres
I didn't hear about this.
during the game.
So we are short in terms of police officers. So they've had to. So we had 5 actual DPW workers involved in helping with that situation.
Wow, he's still hanging on.
And Chris is hanging on, so feel free to jump into this one, but that's exactly what happens. So go ahead, Chris.
No, just the police chief asked me a couple weeks ago that there may be some issues with staffing for reserve officers, and asked if the DPW could help out. So Friday morning, we put together an agreement between the Ashby Union and the police department in the town that we were able to have 5 DPW staff assist with those traffic posts around town. So it may be something you see more of moving forward, but at this point in time, it's a as needed basis, determined by the police chief.
And those agreements made it so it's nothing out of our wallet. It sounds like it's covered.
Doesn't cost
Just like
us
the police
anything.
would be. Okay, great.
So Chris, why were those 3 sites chosen? Were they the less hassle type sites, or because it's easy for them to say, you just can't come down this street?
It's really just what Chief Grace gave me for what he needed for posts. I think that, like you said, they're probably the less hassled locations. Although, Cross Street, South Cross Street, Pine Acres, there are certainly a lot of people that try to go down those streets. Once if they get past the Beach Street, Mechanic Street post, they're usually clear to go down that way. So that's what Chief gave me. If he needs more help in the future, we'll keep helping out.
And I think so we're going to have a conversation about the issue of what's happening with this new Police Reform Act and how it's actually impacting our ability to provide details. And the chief and I were just talking about this earlier. It's something I've actually been speaking out about because I think they've been very short-sighted in how they put this together. It's going to actually limit the number of reserve officers we can get. They won't be able to certify them. It's going to put us in a very difficult bind trying to protect 70,000 people here at any one time. So with state police is limited. They're not having a tough time getting people to do details, as well as having the police in the area do that as well. So we're going to have to be a little more vocal on this point.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good to move forward. So just a couple reminders. The rabies clinic announcement came out a while ago, but that is always a popular event, September 25th. Cats 8 to 10, dogs 10 to 12. Microchipping is also available, so just a reminder on that. And then the chair training, which we haven't run, or at least we haven't run in the recent past, is October 7th. Every chair was sent the invitation, but if someone, is maybe a vice chair and they want to be chair, or any of you guys want to go to the training, it is open to everyone. So I don't think we need to post for any kind of training or anything like that. I think we're safe there. So if everyone wants to go, I know I plan on going. And I think it'll be a good event. If anyone else plans on going, just RSVP to Christina. Anything else for Selectmen's update?
Yeah, I've got one. Millie Green from the Council on Aging, who sort of spearheaded the project to get the funding for the potential new senior/rec center, put a little impromptu meeting together today, just to start the ball rolling, and where she's sort of putting out the word for volunteers who want to come help us form a committee going forward, bringing that plan to the town.
And
So
names for that go to Mark?
either
or to-
me or Millie Green.
Okay, great. And you know, Jeff, I don't know if there's room for anything in the paper, but we are looking for people for this trash, right? But this trash working group, or at least if we can do a Facebook post, I feel like you never know who you tap.
Well, considering I only give you 2 paragraphs now, so that's all you get.
You know, Christina will cover it with a Facebook post, I'm sure, but yeah, trash working group, and maybe we can put that with it too.
The same one, the
Like,
senior/rec center.
calling volunteers. All right, so I think we're ready to fly through.
Wait a minute,
Go ahead, sorry.
one other thing.
Sorry.
Kudos to Mr. Ferguson. Saturday morning, AJ Dooley was in the neighborhood during trash day.
Clean up
trash day.
Foxborough, yeah.
Clean up Foxborough. So, long story short, he had to swing by to, Doc will know what I'm talking about, to get the chip for the game from Friday night, because Jimmy had it so they could watch the game. So he called, and so when he came to the door, I said to him, I said, how's the day going? And he said, good. And I said, I'm going to apologize. I always like to go and participate, but unfortunately I took a little fall last week, I was telling you guys earlier, and my back, I couldn't do the up and down. So I said, and I know you were away, I just said.
Killed me to miss the day.
I know,
It's
I
like
said,
a favorite event.
by any chance, I said, did you have a selectman there to represent? And he said, Seth was there and working like a dog. And he said Seth probably had 4 bags of trash picked up before anybody. So thank you for not only representing, but doing a bang-up job representing the Board of Selectmen. I was
Yeah,
so
it was-
sorry I couldn't go. I
No,
just,
it was
I
my
just couldn't
pleasure,
do
yeah.
it.
My pleasure, and I saw AJ earlier today outside of my house, actually cleaning out the barrels, because I was part of the deal, whatever. But I said to him, basically what I'll say now is that it was really well-run, well-organized, got a lot of work done, was fun, kids had a good time, there was a DJ, it was well-attended, so, you know, all AJ Dooley's crew, Brian Carew and those guys, did a great job, so it's
There was
it's
a
good
nice
event.
picture on Facebook of the entire football
Yeah.
team, who I'm sure AJ said Friday night, we will see you tomorrow morning.
you will be there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you
Listen,
will be
kudos
there.
to them
Yeah.
because they had a tough loss Friday night. For them to
Yeah.
get up early the next morning and
Yeah.
go pick up trash, I'm sure AJ really didn't give them a choice, but
Nope.
they were there,
they were all
and you
there.
know the picture, they were all smiling. So I'm glad it was a great day.
Yeah, it was really good.
All right, action items.
All right, so action items. And we can just skip 9.5 because we already did that one.
Motion to appoint Jean Bonneau to the Council on Aging for a term to end May 31st, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the August 17th, 2021 Board of Selectmen meeting minutes.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Wait a minute, wait a minute.
Oh, sorry.
Second.
Oh, yeah? Oh, can you tell it's getting late? All those in favor? Aye.
Motion to approve the August 30th, 2021 Board of Selectmen meeting minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the use of town property policy.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Did it change?
It's new policy.
Yeah, from last time, no, I had a question that
Oh,
I talked
yeah.
to Bill about cleanup after I saw something happen in Mashpee. It was all addressed
Okay.
already, we didn't have to change it.
Right.
So I think we're at no changes.
Okay.
All right. Second?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Let's see.
Block party.
Joanna Drive.
Motion to approve a block party application from Danielle LaPlante for September 18th, 2021, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Joanna Drive, from 19 to 23 Joanna Drive.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And one final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks,
All
everyone.
right.
Have a good night.